everybody. Welcome to Barcelona, to our city, to our country. I was thinking I should not be here because I am not in your world. I am not in part of your efforts of your project. No, have just been European deputy until 1 month ago, the end of the 2016 year, and then this is my only virtue to be here welcoming you. No? But I do it also having in mind all the more than interesting experience of these past years as European deputy, working or being involved in some of the fields that are also yours. No? I was in ITRE committee, and I was also participating in the files and reports, taking into account the development and the midterm review precisely of the Horizon 2020. That's a new program, and as you know perfectly, that follows the one that the FP7 that you were integrated in, no? in your own program. It's clear your program has been a success, no? And a success not just not only in the field of technological innovation, of applying new methodologies for a very specific social concern, as you are doing, but also in the field of, in management and in the European concept, because you are the proof that Europe can exist really, by the cooperation, by the integration, by the working together from Denmark to Catalonia, from Poland to Portugal, obviously, and including this regional concept of cooperation and sharing efforts that you have shown. It's so not only usefulness, but also I would say that it's a real condition for success in terms of building this common space of quality of life, health in a more general sense, etc. In these last months, around this Horizon 2020 midterm review, I have been in contact with some groups and some similar to yours, no? Because people working in mental disease, Alzheimer and others, people working in diabetes fields, or people working in HIV, AIDS disease. All of them concerned, as yourself, with the orientation, with the principles, with the basic rules for the European policy, for the European programs in their respective fields, and more concretely in the Horizon 2020 program and its development. No? Well, let me say clearly, you have to take profit of the moment, of your opportunity, because you are finishing. You have finished it, and today you are celebrating it, taking account of it, just in the moment when all the decisions are to be taken. You have it's a good moment, but a short period, because in the next weeks, months, almost all decisions about the future of your work, of your possibilities, of your new projects, of the working on a bigger scale, for instance, and with the same concepts, will be decided upon by the Commission and the Council and the Parliament and the European Union. No? And I'm sorry, but I'm not so optimistic as I could be if knowing you and knowing all the people involved in this scientific and social world. No? because it's true. Horizon 2020 in the new vision for the future 7 years period includes in a very explicit manner the social science concept. But it also includes more and more and more some trends, some big trends that, from my point of view, are not so easy to accept, or I think that you should not easily accept. And the trend is excellence, competitiveness, market. The trend is from grants to loans, from then we have to work together. I think in the Parliament you will find a good number of friends in this sense. You should work to recover and to include clearly in this new period the result of your experience, the principles that result from your experience, the evidence that cooperations, regional integration, regional cooperation, benchmarking, permanent benchmarking, innovation also in management questions, not just in technological aspects, it's so important. This relative innovation that's considered as the way for how a lot of regions can learn, can incorporate, can integrate experiences, knowledge, and developments already shown as successful in other regions. And then I think it's what you have been doing with your project. And then I think it's the best news. Now you have a long day here today, here in Barcelona. I hope that you could take profit of our city and not just of your work in the hours and days after this long day today. But be sure, you are in the good shape. You are in the good way. Do not give by finishing your work. Europe needs your experiences. Europe needs the evidences, the lessons that comes out from the type of work that you have been developing these last 3 years. And then I am asking you finally, take your conclusions, be satisfied with them probably, but spread, explain. Let it be known by Commission, by states, by every region. There's a lot of regions besides yours that should be here, that can be here, that will be here if they learn from your experience. Then congratulations and thank you. Okay.
So I would like to thank you, Ernest Maragall, former MEP. He's just finished his period in December, so he's still fresh, and I'm delighted, and I know what Ernest has been doing, and an amazing task in the European Parliament, representing regions, representing Catalonia, but going beyond. So he has been representing you as well. So Ernest, thank you very much, and thank you for coming here. So I'd like to also welcome you to the final conference of MasterMind. As Klaus will say later, I think is one of the few projects that's finished on time and is accomplished all the goals that you were aiming. So this is great news, excellent news for that. So, and I would like to say welcome to Barcelona, welcome to Catalonia as well. You are in a very special building, so I think you'll appreciate that. Take advantage of the city, take advantage of the inspiration that Gaudi, the architect, brought into this city and in the field of architecture. So I think this is something that we could share, the inspiration and creativity. So this is something, an analogy to the project you've been running. I'm also very pleased to give you the welcome on behalf of the partners of the project. And I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Tony Dadeu. I'm the current director of the Agency for Health Quality and Assessment of Catalonia from the Ministry of Health. And at the same time, I'm the chair of an association based in Brussels. It's the European Regional and Local Health Authorities, that some of your regions are members of this association. So 2 hats and 1 place, Barcelona. So the MasterMind project has been running since 2014. I know that some of you, you come just to attend this final conference. So it started 2014 and is about to finish now. It's a co-funded European project to deploy e-mental health services for depression. The aim of this project is to pave the way for equal access to quality mental health care across Europe. It's been 23 partners from 16 European regions, and you've been collaborating and sharing your knowledge in order to reach real-life scale implementation of 2 services. One is computerized cognitive behavioral therapy. You should get used to an acronym that's called CCBT, because you're going to listen to that quite often during this conference. And the second one is Video Conference for Collaborative Care and Treatment. So the acronym is VCCC. So the conference will take its starting point in sharing the experiences and achievements, and will set the scene for the debate for the future of e-mental health in Europe and beyond. This conference has been planned to serve as a platform to present the results of the project. But, and I want to say but, the most important will be your contribution, your debate, your engagement during the conference. So I invite you, when the roundtables take place, that you participate as well. And this will be a debate about the sustainability of e-mental health services in Europe and beyond, not just Europe. Like Ernest Maragall said, we have to scale up your experience and your knowledge. So this conference is bringing experts representing the different partners, but as well different stakeholders in the field of mental health. And we'll be discussing in roundtables about the direction and flow of the e-mental health services in the future. And another thing, as I said before, we are going to debate, and I would like to start a debate about the role that administrations, public administration should take. A role in their deployment in the new IT services through Europe, while we should address the present and the future strategy for the uptake of these services. So how is this conference going to be set up? So the scenario for this conference will be that we'll start with the results of the MasterMind, and then the conference will progress in 4 key questions. The first question will be what we've gained. So this will be about the results of MasterMind, and Klaus Deldel Pedersen is going to explain that. And then there'll be the first roundtable, and the question is why it's important MasterMind, so the benefits from the stakeholders' point of view. A second roundtable will be on how to make it happen outside MasterMind, so it's about the sustainability, what happens afterwards. The third roundtable will be where to implement it. So, and this is the last question we'll take, and this last question will take us to the message to the authorities. So again, where to implement it. So we should prioritize, and we should find the right place at the right moment to implement it. And finally, the fourth roundtable will be the here and now. So it will be the momentum achieved to be exploited. The maturity of the solution has been proved, and lessons learned should facilitate the deployment in other regions. So, in other words, supranational support is needed. So, and now, I think you know more or less about the agenda, focus on those 4 key questions, roundtables. Will be a coffee break in the morning. There'll be lunch, and then we'll continue. And we've got the honor as well to have a privileged keynote speaker, Alex Kalash. Alex, who's been a good friend of mine, so I'm delighted to see you here. And he's, again, a very inspirational person. And finally, I'm going just to give the floor to Klaus. Klaus is going to share with you the results of MasterMind. And then, please, Klaus, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for accepting to be the chair of this conference today. We are looking forward to that. I'm sure you'll do a strict schedule, management of the conference, so we are looking forward to that. And welcome, everybody, to the final conference of MasterMind. It's kind of scary that it has only spent 3 years. I have more or less, that is 14 days or something. When I was looking at preparing my slides, it said down in the corner, welcome to the kickoff meeting in Badalona. And I said, yeah, I'm ready for that. But we are at the end of the conference, and we'll start with a session now where I will scratch the surface of what we have been doing in MasterMind. We will not be too much into details. And after me, Helene, who is kind of the inspirational and founding mother of the MasterMind project, will set the scene for the content that we are working in, or the context that we are working in. So we will have that also as a background for the discussion. And then I hope we will have a really nice day. So it's not only about MasterMind, but also, as Tony said, it's about starting the discussion with other projects and with the world outside, and that's probably the most important part of today. So my presentation, a short introduction. What were we aiming at? What did we do? And what are we going to do in the next years? Many of you have seen this a lot of times. It's quite standard that the project was funded under the SIP program, so it was one of the good old implementation programs. It's said that it's a 40 million euro budget and it's 50% funded by the Commission. I think that all the regions that has participated know that this is not true, because every region has spent far more than the 50% that they got from the Commission. This only covers a small fraction of the real investments that has been going on in the regions that has participated in the project, because implementation in a large scale in e-health services is not something that is cheap. So we have spent a lot more money than just what it says here. As Tony shortly introduced, is that we are aiming at a service that is targeting depression, and we are looking at adult depressions. We have been looking at both inpatient and outpatients, and we have had the two services, the CCPT and the CCVC service. The one built in an online system, and the other one using video conferences as a tool for creating new ways of collaborating. We set up an ambitious project. We were going to upscale the services in the region that was participating. We were going to help other regions to get the services implemented. We were going to demonstrate that it's actually worked in a clinical way. We had the clinical effect as we were expecting. We were going to change the way that we were delivering care by optimizing the services in the region that was participating. We were going to increase the access to healthcare services across Europe and across the regions that was going to be participating. And we were, of course, going to do it in a way that was safe and cost effectively. So really ambitious, classical EU proposal. We will promise you everything and deliver it for absolutely nothing. So that was what we set up to do. And the way we were going to do it, well, we were going to implement the services in 15 regions across Europe. We were going to have a two-wave setup with regards to the CCBT services, so that we had more experiences region that should be the first wave, and second wave regions that was going to learn from the experiences in these regions and transfer the lessons learned to their local environment. We were going to create a good, well-structured and scientifically based evaluation by using the MAS framework for our evaluation concept. And we were going to provide the services for actually a lot of patients, around more than 5,000 patients, was what we promised. And we started with building on what really already was available, because there was CCBT solutions out there. They had been proven that they were efficient, so we were using that as the basis for the CCBT solutions. Because it was a European project, we said that we were doing the same across Europe. We are just doing it in a slightly different way. So we are talking about functional equivalent services, because they have to be adapted to the local situation, local healthcare structure, and the local cultures. So we are delivering the same service, but with local adaptations. And I think as we went along with the project, we saw that the local differences maybe were slightly bigger than we anticipated when we started. This is an example of how big a difference there is in the way that we are delivering the CCBT services across Europe. It goes from 5 sessions in Norway to 25 sessions in Germany, delivering the same kind of service in a way. And it reflects the difference in Europe, and it reflects the difference in the healthcare structure. So it's the same service, but it absolutely delivered in a different way. And it's quite interesting to see the differences, but also to see the interaction between the regions and the discussion of why we have these differences. I think one of the things we're going to learn a lot from in the future. But not only are there differences in how many sessions each of the sites are delivering, there's also differences in how engaged the healthcare system is in delivering the service to the patients. It goes from more or less pure self-help to a really close connection with video conferences incorporated as part of the service. And I think we have more or less every kind of variation across the project on that scale. So again, it's the same service we are trying to deliver, but we are doing it in a different way that is adjusted to the local needs and the local structures of the healthcare system, so that we can provide a good service to the citizens where they are. And I think it gives us a good opportunity to discuss across Europe how we are going to do it in the right way. Do we have to have more tools in the box for each region, or can we just use one tool in one region? So there's a lot of learning possibilities across Europe from the experiences in MasterMind on this one. We also, when we started the project, thought that video conferences is something that is a useful tool if you want to collaborate in a different way across the healthcare system. And honestly, in between these 4 walls and the internet, when we started, we thought this was the easy piece. Well, we have all invested to some degree in video conferences infrastructure, so why don't we just use it? And we can just start using it. It turned out to be the difficult part of the project. It turned out to be more difficult to reorganize the way we are delivering healthcare by the use of video conference than we expected. It also turned out that video conference is not just video conferencing. Actually, when we start to group the different kind of services that was up and that either were up and running or came up and running in the regions, we saw that we have at least 4 different ways of using video conferencing for the collaboration between the healthcare professional with or without the patient included, the patient and specialist and GPs included, in acute situations, or just as a support tool for healthcare professionals from specialists. So we ended up with having 4 different services in the MasterMind project and started to gain a lot of experiences in the benefits and the cons, and not at least the difficulties in implementing the kind of video conferences service across the regions. But we also saw that video conferences is one of the tools that is there for delivering healthcare services to places where there's no alternative. So, and I think the best example is Lars from Greenland, because there is either video conferencing or nothing. And it goes, of course, for Greenland, that's obviously because of the distances and whatever. But in reality, it's not just Greenland, it's everywhere in Europe that you have the situation that you either can deliver your services on video or not deliver anything at all, due to the centralization of the healthcare system and the healthcare expertise. I think that we have gained a lot of experiences in MasterMind around how to use video conferences, how to change the structures of it. But I don't think we are at the same level of evidence of the use of video conferences as we are on CCPT. So I think there's a lot of things that still have to be investigated in that, so we get a better ground for the use of video conference and the change of organizing the healthcare system that is needed to do that efficiently. So what have we spent our 3 years on? Well, we have implemented the services in the regions. We have recruited the patients for that, for the evaluation. We have collected data. We have exchanged knowledge and ideas and a lot. We have communicated to everyone who wants to listen, and also those who didn't want to listen. And we have tried to plan the future. And suddenly 3 years is gone. About the implementation, well, we can say that we have done it. All sites are up and running. All sites have included the patient. Most of the sites have even included more patients than expected. Some sites were delayed in the process, which is normal, also in EU projects. What is not normal is that all sites actually managed to get in by the end of the project and have patients up and running. So that has been a great pleasure. I think that most of the delays that has been in the project has been because the regions has been more ambitious in about how they wanted to set up the services, how much they want to integrate the services with other systems. So it has been okay because we have catch up in the end. We have done a good, thorough evaluation. We have had a generic protocol that was the frame for all the work we've done, that set the guidance for what we should do and how we should do it. We had both qualitative and quantitative data. I think especially Christian was in charge of getting this protocol up and running and make it large and good, and a guidance for all of us. We had a central database, so we were sure that the data quality was okay in Veneto. That was set up and was really efficient and running well. We spent a lot of time focusing on data management. As we went along, we realized that getting data in is not enough. You also have to make sure that it's the right data, that the quality of the data is there. We had a good evaluation teams that has been working really, really hard to get not only the data in, but also to get analysis out of it, so that it's useful not only for us, but for the rest of the world. And we also managed, in the end, to get a kind of a data sharing agreement, which actually turned out to be more difficult than we ever had expected. So a good advice to anyone who is going to do a project, start with that in the beginning. It's not a good plan to do it in the end. But we have now one that can be used as a basis for a new one. So that's there. We used the MAST model as our frame for our evaluation. We did that because it has been used for a lot of telemedicine evaluation across Europe since it was developed in 2010. It's a good framework to work in because it covers the areas that are needed for decision makers to have knowledge about when they want to take decision about to implement or not implement. And it has been improved over time, and I think that in MasterMind we can add new knowledge to the use of the MAST model when it comes to e-mental health or the mental health area that we haven't had before. So not only have we used it, but I think also we as a project can give a lot of things back to the MAST model to improve the way it works. So we are looking forward to develop that also in the future and get our knowledge into that. It's also relevant or interesting because it has the box about or the element about transferability. And I think we only scratched the surface of that in the MasterMind project there. I think we have a lot more to gain from the data we have when it comes to transfer knowledge from MasterMind to other regions. What we are, of course, especially proud of is that we not only got the number of patients in the project that we have promised, we have actually more than doubled the number of patients in the project that we should have. And I think it shows how committed the regions were in the project, because without really a thorough effort from the region side, we will never have got that number. Of course, it's a little cheating because the Scots were doing really, really well and collecting a lot of patients, but all regions has collected patients and even more patients than they should. So we in the end have had more than 11,000 people that has been offered the services from the MasterMind across Europe. And I think that's also what has been a good driver in the project, is to see that we actually gained the goals that we set up. Oops, I knew I had too many slides. What we have been doing a lot of knowledge exchange. We have been having a marketplace that was an internal knowledge exchange between first and second waivers. We had advisory boards. We had a committed region function so other regions could gain access to the knowledge and to the project. We have had workshops. We had an uptake seminar where we got input from the outside about how are we going to use the results of MasterMind. And we have been working with the European level on that one. What we have been spending a lot on is on communication. I think this is probably, at least from my point of view, the EU project that has the best communication effort ever, because we have been using all tools in the box and we have been using them efficiently and strategically. And I actually think that we have come across the border not just being an EU project, but being something that has been influential across Europe. So some results shortly. We can see we have created services for people who was able to get them before. A little surprised when we look at it, it seems that the people that are in the project, especially in the first waivers, are a little more sick than we actually expected. We had an expectation of that it would be mild and moderate depression, but it seems that at least some places it's the more severe people that are getting in. Is it safe? Yeah, we think so. At least when we set up the project, we were going to monitoring really thoroughly the number of suicide attempts, and it was not big in that. We see that people are getting better when they're using the CCPT services. That was also our expectation because it's built on something that already was proven in RCTs across the world. So this is no surprise. It would have been a surprise if we haven't had these goals, but we probably have got what we expected to get of numbers. The same goes for the video conferencing thing, but again, here we are back to we are maybe not at the same evidence level as we were with the CCPT, so we still need to do a lot of investigation in that. But we can see the effects are there. Are people satisfied with the services? In general, yes. Both patients and healthcare professionals, with really big differences across the sites, and that's also quite interesting to see the difference across that. I would say that I have in other e-health solutions seen better ratings with regards to the satisfaction of both the patients and the healthcare professionals. I think this is something we have to take into account when we go ahead to see if there's something that can be improved. What I think we have achieved in MasterMind is actually that we have started to move the market across Europe. We see that there is two types of solutions. You can either buy one from the market or you can develop your own. And that has been different. I think that's quite interesting to see how the regions have different choices in that. But we can also see that has been a different way of integrating or not integrating the services. And it's going to be quite interesting to see the evaluation or the duration of this in the future, how that will go along. I hope that we'll give a more live market across Europe so we have more opportunities to choose from. We also see that we have actually been able to influence the reimbursement system in different regions because without the money, it kind of hurts. So it's quite important that we get reimbursement systems to change. And we can see that MasterMind has been one of the tools that the regions has been using to change the reimbursement system, especially in Germany, and I think also in Denmark, it has been one of the drivers for that. So lessons learned, no surprise, I think. Get the healthcare professionals on board, make the IT work, have a management strategy, get people trained, get some guidelines, tell people what you're doing, and make sure that you're paid. It's quite simple. So why does it take 17 years to go from knowledge to daily operation? Because this is not difficult, in theory. And where are we going from now? Well, I think what we can see from the deployment plans is that we are going in 4 directions. We see that the number of patients for the solutions that are there will increase, are increasing. We see that new types of organizations are starting to use it or will use the MasterMind service, for instance, job centers, prisons, and things like that. We see more clinical services being drawn into this, both CCPT and video conferencing, like anxiety, stress, and so on. But we also see a number of IT platforms developing, so we will get more things to choose in between. I think this is quite interesting to see the development going across Europe in that way. That will give us a lot of work in the future. So I think we did it. And I think this is due to a really, really big team effort. So thanks a lot to all the partners for your excellent work. And hopefully looking forward to that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Klaus, because you've been on time. I knew you. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the keynote speaker. The keynote speaker, I'm going to just tell you. Oh, all right. Okay. Oh, sorry. Sorry. yeah, sorry for that. So what about chair I am? So, is there any technician here for the presentation? Carmen, could you give me a hand, please? Carmen Seinos? Is the presentation coming now? Okay.
This is by far the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you so much. It makes me modest, which is good. But nevertheless, thank you. I'm very happy to share some thoughts with you today about the experience and the lessons we have learned with the MasterMind project over the last 3 years. I won't go into the details about the results because Klaus has presented already some of them very carefully, and there are some other presentations during the day which all hint and panel discussions on these results. But what I would like to share with you is some thoughts, lessons learned from the wider context in which the MasterMind project has taken place. But before I do so, and you forgot to welcome me, but I want to welcome you all. Bon dia. And before I start to share some of the thoughts, I really want to thank the core team of the MasterMind project. That's of course Klaus, but it's also Mette, it's also Christian Vis and Carmen. And Carmen, I have to say you have been wonderful throughout the project, but that you have achieved that Klaus and Christian are wearing a suit and a tie, I think that's the best thing you have done. They looked so beautiful, I didn't recognize them this morning, but having said so, Klaus hinted already on the fact that the MasterMind project has shown that sustainability in the e-mental health domain is possible. And why I'm saying that, maybe you all know that with many new innovative developments, also from a service perspective, it's often said, not in my bag, what is not has been developed in my yard, we won't use. And the MasterMind project has shown by applying first and second wave organization that it is possible to share interventions, so to avoid reinventing the wheel and to share not only within a country but also between countries. So I think that is a great achievement. The other great achievement is that this project was based in routine care. So we had to deal with all the conditions which are exemplary for routine care. It was not a controlled trial or a controlled setting. And I think worldwide, this has been one of the first projects to implement ICBT or CCBT for depression on such a large scale. And I was happy, Klaus, that you presented the numbers reached, thanks to the Scottish. But anyhow, I can tell you that we have beaten the Australians, because Nick Titov presented his results of 2016 of the MindSpot clinic implementation, and they reached around they got into treatment 4,300 patients. So I think we are doing a great job. And also be aware, and that we have noticed, because as Klaus said, the communication on the project has been very well, that the United States, but also Australia, is now looking at the results of MasterMind and also the future implemental project, because that is worldwide really very innovative. Having said so, the MasterMind is an EU project of many others, and I'm not going into detail into them, but sustainability is also directed towards the sharing of the results of many projects, not only within the MasterMind project. And I think and I would like specifically to thank the European Commission, and I show you a couple of projects, but I also see Ulrich Hegel here, who has been director of the European Depression Alliance, who have done loads of interesting projects on e-mental health and the prevention of depression as well. But I really think in order to be sustainable with the knowledge we develop, we need to share the knowledge we gain in the different projects and also collaboratively extend the consortium and work together. Now, very soon in June, and this project, Klaus, is not on time. I'm the project leader, so that's why it's not on time. But anyhow, in June, the results will be available about the comparative cost effectiveness of ICBT, where we have looked not only at the clinical effectiveness, but also how the effectiveness of ICBT relates to face-to-face treatment, both from a clinical and cost perspective. The MasterMind project is center stage during the day. Implemental is actually a project that builds further on the MasterMind project, and which has just been launched in January, headed by Klaus and Christian Vis. Another interesting project, and I just show them to you because it shows how much is going on in Europe, not only from a scientific perspective, but also from a routine care perspective. The Interreg project has started, in which Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, Belgium and France collaborate also within the domain of innovative e-mental health interventions. Now, having said that, the question is, of course, are we there already? And besides all the very good news you will hear today about the project, I still think loads of work needs to be done, both in terms of access to evidence-based treatment, in terms of reach. We do perfectly with e-mental health, but if you look at the target group we reach, that are mostly middle-aged women, or not middle-aged, between 35 and 55 years of age, it are not those who have never received help, but often half or 60% has been in treatment before. So in all those, in terms of effectiveness, in terms of reach, we need to improve. And here you see some facts. Why do we still need to improve? The clear fact is that, and I'm one of the, the most enthusiastic persons and scientists about e-mental health, but we are still not doing it better as routine care. So the biggest challenge for the years to come is to try to not only increase the reach, which we have tried with MasterMind, but also to increase the effectiveness of the interventions we have on offer, both from a preventative and treatment perspective. That also holds, there is a whole myth about the cost effectiveness. I'm saying it to you because there is this idea that e-mental health will be cheaper than care as usual. I think this won't be happen. This will not happen. Results so far show some cost effectiveness, but not yet when you compare it directly to face-to-face treatment. And that's because many organizations still need to work with it or put it on as an add-on, and often innovations cost money. So maybe the savings will be there, but they will come from another perspective. We still do not know for whom it works and for whom it doesn't work. The length of treatment is a black box. Klaus showed a perfect figure. There are treatments consisting of 5 sessions, there are treatments consisting of 20 sessions, and in terms of effectiveness, there's not so much difference on ICBT, and that does not hold only for mild to moderate, but also for the severe depressed. So we really need to know in a better way for whom does it work, why, and what is the optimum component of treatment. Implementation lags behind. Prevention lags behind as well. The evidence is occurring, and Ulrich, I hope you can shed some of your thoughts about it. Evidence is increasing that prevention based on ICBT works. A recent study by Claudia Bandrock showed that we can prevent 25% of full-blown depression when you provide a preventative intervention to patients with subclinical complaints, and still prevention is not landed. Maybe in Scotland you made a very first good attempt, but prevention is not being offered on a large scale. So treatment alone doesn't do the trick. And not last but least, we need to know more about the side effects, but also about the placebo effects. So what we actually see currently is that the effect sizes of our ICBT treatments, they are decreasing, and many reasons can lay behind it. It can be that the methodology has become better, but it can also be that the placebo effect of internet-based treatment, that the novelty is fading away. And one observation or result of many studies is that we also see that guided and unguided treatment, there was, when we started, a large difference in effect size between the two treatments, and they are now also fading away. So what to do next? And I hope, and that is my take-home message for you all today, and I hope we can discuss it during today, I really think it's time for a paradigm shift, and I hope that the projects behind of after MasterMind, and for example, implement all, will go beyond relabeling old wine in new bottles. I really think something others. We need to opt for a paradigm shift. And I give you some food for thought. I don't have time to discuss that in depth because the real keynote speaker takes the floor. But what we exploring in the Netherlands, but I also think in Europe, is that we, given all the chronic conditions and more the reoccurrence, for example, of depression among many people, we really think we need to go for another definition of health and mental health. And maybe you all recall the definition of the WHO expressing a need for health for all in all kinds of domains of life. And we now think we need to focus much more on the fact that there are people living with chronic conditions, and that we much more should focus on how we can learn them coping skills or to get the best out of them, even though they have a chronic condition. So prevention, okay, but also change from a complete healthy society to a society that is able to bounce back and to live with a number of chronic conditions. That also applies, and I really think that's another important consideration, that we need to look at other outcomes than only a decrease of depressive symptoms or remission, because I really think that life is much more than only a decrease of depression. What does that mean for the patient? So, for example, look more at quality of life or coping skills or resilience. Another interesting development, and I think with e-mental health we should touch upon that to a much higher degree as well. And you see that in the discourse all kind of new concepts are being introduced, and I like these two a lot. It's co-centrality and individuality. The first one has been actually introduced by the former creative designer of Philips, and he said, we are so individualistically focused that's actually outdated. That has been a way of thinking about the world and a way of thinking about mental health from a concept which was born in the Renaissance, and we must much more look from an individual in interaction with others and with his or her environment and with his or her peers, networks, and disease. So I really think we have, with our e-mental health field, not touched upon the ability of information and communication technology to facilitate this kind of new way of interactive thinking. Blending, there are some people who are like Anneke van Schaik, becoming an expert in the provision of blending treatment, but I think we need to blend more. We do not need only to blend ICT, online treatment, with face-to-face treatment, but I also think from a perspective of prevention, we should maybe think of direct business-to-consumer products, like now you can buy all kinds of medications at the drugstore when you have starting complaints or mild complaints. And I think we should take out also our preventative interventions out of only the medical system. So that's another way of blending. And I think we should blend not only the individual components, but also what's happening in a community and combining the social, the virtual in a hybrid way. I'm almost there. My last, so there's blending, there is the paradigm shift, and I also think we should, and that's all, of course, is a component of the same way of thinking, ecolize. It's an ecological momentary assessment, is maybe to you all a very known concept by now. That means that we can, by the use of smartphones and all kind of devices, we can monitor the progress or the occurrence of mental health and disease in the moment, just in time. We call that ecological momentary assessments. So you do not assess retrospectively, but in the moment in time. Ecological momentary interventions are also being developed, but I don't think that's enough. I think we also should look much more at ecological momentary implementation and have rapid circles so that we can try out something in routine care, study it, and change it or alternate it when the moments are there and the results show that we are in need of change. So we need to have much more iterative circles. This whole knowledge cycle of developing, doing research and implementing, I think we need to become more fuzzy about it. Try out things in routine practice, learn and wait with your randomized controlled trials till you have learned enough and know both about your treatment but also about the condition and the context in which you provide your treatment. Now, I want to end with this slide because we talk about Europe. We talk about collaboration between Spain, Denmark, the Netherlands, Germany. But here you see a slide, and that's actually a slide where I live. This is the IJ. It's a river in Amsterdam. I'm allowed to live there because Jan Smit is a real person from Amsterdam. I'm originally from Rotterdam, and it's still a fight, but I live there. And what I actually find so amazingly, so I live on the Java island, and that's not a pure high income, it's a middle income island in the IJ. And actually the community there is very strong. There is depression, we know people who have committed suicide, there are problems, but in one way or the other, that small component in the middle of the island has built up a community who is sustainable both face-to-face and by making smart use of technology. While at the other side, and that's literally 300 meters at the other side of the river, there's the Vogelbuurt. The penetration rate and the access to the internet and smartphone is similar to the Java island. But the way people live there, they have so many problems, both in terms of deaths and social conditions, but also of depression. But we don't reach them. We do not reach them with our e-mental health interventions. And I really think if we want to make a difference, we need to reach out to those people as well with maybe other type of interventions. And you see the same for Kattenburg. It's a similar neighborhood, but there's also, next to Kattenburg, a very innovative hub. So there are many small enterprises who develop smart devices, serious games, and whatsoever. And I really think they are all isolated neighborhoods, and that's happening in the middle of Amsterdam, and I think sometimes things like that happen in Europe or are happening in Europe as well. And I think we should not only look at increasing the reach, but also how can we learn from each other and make smart use of information and communication technology to reach out to less developed regions or countries as well. And now I thank you for your attention.
So thank you so much, Helen. And I would like to apologize, but at the same time saying my congratulations and thanks for your thought-provoking presentation. I think it's been stunning and very inspirational for the debate that will go on later. So there'll be debate, and I'll try to encourage the debate as well. So now I'm going to introduce Alex Kalash. Alex Kalash is the co-president of the International Longevity Center Global Alliance, a 17-country consortia of think tanks on aging policy with consultative status to the United Nations, headquartered at Columbia University, New York. Professor Kalash has been leading aging policy worldwide for almost 40 years, both an academic and as a civil servant internationally in the WHO. It was in the later role as director of the Global Program on Aging of the World Health Organization that he fomented the age-friendly cities, and that was a movement. And then he launched the WHO Global Age-Friendly Cities Guide and the WHO Active Aging Policy Framework. I'm just going to give the floor to Alex because he's got lots to say. And please, Alex, welcome here and thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much, Tony. Tony said that he's my friend. This is why, Helen, he was so eager to jump and not allow you to speak. It was purely friendship. It was nothing to do with you. And I also want to thank the MasterMind, Tony, all of you as organizers, but in particular I want to thank Carmen, an old friend, a force of nature, which is wonderful to see you again in this very building where we first met. So what I'm going to talk is about mental health, which is your subject. I don't know much about the subject, but I know something about the longevity revolution and put it within the context of what you are doing, which is the fourth industrial revolution. It is within this context that I'm going to talk. And first of all, explain why I think that we are living through unprecedented, with far-reaching consequences, revolutions. The first is to do with this. If you look at the population in 1950 and then follow this population globally to 2050, you will see that the total population will have increased by less than 4 times. It is a lot. We have billions more of people to educate, to nourish, to provide decent jobs. But we are talking about less than 4 times. We talk about this all the time. And yet what is really revolutionary is what is happening with the population that is 60 plus. It's going to increase 10 times. The population 80 plus is going to increase from 14 million to close to 400 million. When I was a child, I would not expect that by the time I would reach 80 plus, I would be with so many people of my age. This is revolutionary. Life expectancy in my country when I was born was 43. Today, 76. And we're not talking about 33 years plus of old age. We are talking about 33 years of life. This is revolutionary, that we have this gift of longevity here to stay. If you look at the population from 2015, when there was only one single country, Japan, with more than 30% of the population over 60, and you follow within the next 30, 35 years, there will be many more Japans throughout the world. Brazil, for instance, is not there because according to these projections from WHO, we would just about not reach with 29.7. But there are many countries that we call today developing, emerging countries, that will have a population within the next 3 decades over 30% over 60. It's also the speed. If you look at France, and it has taken 145 years for France to double the proportion of older people from 10 to 20%. Look at what is happening to my country, to China, and other emerging countries that will compress this doubling from 10 to 20% into 20 years, less than 1 generation. With one very big difference. You, developed countries, you first got rich and then you aged. Developing countries are aging much faster within a context of poverty. That is where the impact of what you are doing can be outstanding, that we can provide services in novel ways. Because for you, it is almost like a luxury. You tell me that if, even in Holland, across the canal, 300 meters away, and you are unable to reach, what we need to do is to extend the privileges that you have in your small community. But if you think globally, how we can reach across oceans other countries where the challenges are so much bigger, because what I said before, we are getting older within a context of poverty. And this has never happened before. Developed countries got old because first they had got rich, and it was over a century or more. Population aging, therefore, coincides with other converging major interdependent global trends. And I'm talking about depression here, which is the context. Let us simplify. Not so much about mental health, but depression. And the fourth industrial revolution, which I will explain what is this concept if you haven't heard that before. And they are shaping our collective future. Listen to what Klaus Schwab, who is the chairman of the World Economic Forum. I work in one of the committees of the World Economic Forum. We are working on human enhancement within this context of aging. The fourth industrial revolution is the inexorable shift from simple digitalization that characterized the third industrial revolution to a much more complex form of innovation based in the combination of multiple technologies in novel ways. We first had the first industrial revolution, the domain, force, power. Then the second, to get into the production at scale, massification. Then the third, digitalization. But now we have something that is far more complex. It is this convergence of many different technologies that are shaping the world in the 21st century. This will mean a shift from ownership into access. You have examples already. Uber is today the major provider of individual mobility services, transport, taking the role of taxis yesterday. And yet they don't own one single car. Airbnb is another example. They don't have hotels. They don't have one single bedroom that they can call themselves. It's all to do with the organization of services and the use of technology in a massive way. We often talk about disruptions. This is disruptive. This is something that shakes the population or the society in which we are, providing services in a way that we had not even been able to dream with only 5 or 10 years ago. So it is the reconfiguration of services delivered leading to a radical transformation of the nature of employment. And this is important to bear in mind. The fourth industrial revolution is characterized by this hyperconnectivity of a multitude of components, and it is creating an unprecedented fusion of new technologies across the digital, the physical, and the biological components or domains. Just for you to bear in mind this, the World Economic Forum is telling us, according to the studies that they have been conducting, that 60% of the jobs to be performed by the next generation, those that are primary, secondary school, they don't even exist yet. We have seen many occupations. I certainly have seen many occupations from my childhood and youth that have completely disappeared. Talk about telephone operators or porters or people that would be providing services, typists. All this is something of the past we only see in old films from Hollywood. Well, this is going to continue to exist. A very fast shaping up. And that has major implications for the education sector, because if you don't teach these children to think rather than to be recipients of information, they will fail. They will not keep up. And we'll have this huge divide of those people that belong to the elite with very good education systems, especially the public sector education, and those people that have not been able to innovate, that have not been able to rethink, to reprocess the information so that they can keep up with the transformations that we are going to see. And then we have the other global trend. It's to do what you do and what you know. It is depression. The World Health Organization tells us that very soon the major burden of disabilities, of DALIs in the world is going to be depression. This has tremendous implications throughout the world. Also because if we put this together, we'll have more people with depression, and especially more older people with depression. And we have to do something about this, because the roots of this depression are already in operation, especially if we think in terms of the excluded across the canal. Those are the people that we have to reach out to prevent and to provide the adequate services through e-health so that we can take them out of that suffering that you know from your community we can do and can be done. I think that these dynamic forces impact every single aspect of each individual life at all stages, creating multiple and diverse opportunities as well as risks. You probably know that in the Chinese language, you don't have two words for risk and opportunity. It's the same. You can look at one side, it is the opportunity. On the other hand, you have the risk built in, and you have to react to see if it is the opportunity that you are going to focus or if it is going to be the risk. And they cannot be taken into isolation. Look, for instance, today, the telecommunications sector invading our domain. We could not have conceived this 10, 15, 20 years ago. That telecommunication companies are going to provide services, and increasingly they are going to occupy a space that was in the realm of a patient-doctor, health professional relationship. Uber Care, I believe, is here to stay. In my country, we have many new companies that are starting exactly that, to provide care which is tailored to your needs, but also tailored to the needs of who is going to provide that care. So with all this, within this context, we have to ask ourselves, how are we going to respond? And when I talk about technology, in particular when I talk about design, I'm not talking about devices or gadgets. I'm talking about how we frame and we design the world where we live. And I'm going to give an example not to be followed. I work at the World Health Organization for 13 years. For 13 years, I was campaigning passionately, do something about this staircase. You get into WHO building, of course you leave the outdoor, which is usually brighter, not so much in Geneva, it can be very dark, but you get into the inside of the building and you see this very imposing marble staircase. It is black marble with white stripes, so it's really designed to confuse you. You don't really see what you are doing. It looks like a big toboggan. But to make it a little more difficult, the steps are very wide and shallow. You cannot see and you cannot feel with your feet, unusual. But WHO, being very generous, has done something nice. You can have two options. You can fall to the left and when you bang your head on the glass, or you can fall to the right where a cactus garden is waiting for you. And that is WHO. That is the World Health Organization, and in 14 years, close, I haven't managed to persuade the people in the 7th floor where the wisdom comes, which is where the Director General's office is. You have to do something. Well, no, we don't have older people here. It's not a question of having older people. If you design this staircase, redesign, you cannot rebuild the building, but you can simply put a handrail in the middle, one to the left, one to the right. You can do this sympathetically. Give me $3,000 and I will ask students from design next door. And they will do something sympathetic, and everybody is going to benefit. And this is the point. If it is designed for older people, it's going to be suitable to anybody in this room, or a teenager, or a child, or the Director General. She's actually over 60, but everybody is going to benefit from something that you put the lens of aging, and you are going to respond to that. That is a response to the longevity revolution. But there is more, because you have to think in terms of all the other needs that we are here. And that is why, while as a director of WHO, we conceived and launched in 2002 the Active Aging Policy Framework. I believe that some of you, even last night, I was talking to Marie, and she knows and has been using, because it was a new way to look at aging, not looking at health of the elderly, looking at this beautiful building, iconic. Obviously, this theater was built not at the time of Gaudi. And you look at how I can come here if I'm sitting there with the other speakers. I cannot come from the front door. I would have to go around in a wheelchair in order to have the benefit of speaking to you, because you have steps without a handrail. This is inexcusable. And this is what the Active Aging Policy Framework has been doing. It is thinking about aging in a way that it is challenging, it is looking at aging, adopting a very strong life course perspective, and defining active aging as the process throughout the life. It's not to wait for you to be 65 and then I will think about you. No, it is throughout the life course, optimizing the opportunities for three very important things: health, participation, which implies to have rights, entitlements, to have the right to participate in your society, whatever age, and then the security, the protection that you need in order to continue to participate, because, face it, throughout the world, hundreds of millions of people are aging not like we are here, not like you are in Europe, old Europe. We are aging with diseases, with poverty, without access, with premature disabilities, and that is what we have to think in terms of protection, the protection that is needed to provide them with quality of life. Well, in order to do so, we have to think about the determinants of active aging. Yes, we have borrowed a lot from my friend Michael Marmot's, the social determinants of health. But you can see here that if this is the aim, active aging, we have to think in terms of health and social services in new ways, as you do. Our behavior and lifestyle, We have to think in terms of our personal determinants. And I'm not only talking about hereditary factors, genetics. I'm talking about personal dimensions that are very important. How you look at a glass, it's half empty or half full. I'm talking about qualities that you can perhaps not be trained, say, to be more optimistic, but to be lighter. A grumpy adult is boring, but a grumpy older person is going to be excluded. My father-in-law died at the age of 104. He had a quality which was wonderful. He had good sense of humor. When he was at the last admission to hospital, about to die, my son happened to be in the room and noticed when the nurse came and started chatting and asked him, "So, tell me again, how many children do you have?" And the response from the old man, who had that good sense of humor, even to the end, very frail, he replied, "Children, so far only 4. That makes a difference. He was surrounded by people up to the very end because he had this quality of establishing the communication with other generations. The physical environment, examples are all around us, the social determinants, and of course the economic determinants. All of them contribute to active aging in isolation, but they are interrelated. It is dynamic within a context of gender, not the biological aspects of being a man and a woman, but gender, the social construct, and the culture where we live. Well, this importance of the life course is paramount, and I think that we can illustrate this to this graph, which is there in the active aging policy framework. In terms of our functional capacity, we are born completely dependent on somebody that is going to provide care to us. We very quickly, through the stages of growth and development, childhood and youth, we are going to reach the peak of our functional capacity, say at 25, at 30. You don't see gold Olympic champions beyond the age of 30, which is exceptional. But then, inevitably, our functional capacity is going to decline. And you cannot expect to reach the age of, say, 85, running around the block with the same speed or the same muscle power that you had at 25. That is aging. Provide, though, that we are above the disability, the dependency threshold, we continue to be a resource to our families, to our societies, even to the economy, if the society allows us to. The problem is here. You never reach the peak, and you start going down very quickly, mostly because of the social determinants of health. It is that hypertension that could have been prevented but was not, and is there at the age of 35, misdiagnosed, and then it progresses without access to services, complicates, and that person is under severe stress at work with 2 or 3 children to feed and bad public transport. I'm not talking about you. You live in Europe, and the countries that are represented here are the best of what Europe can offer. I'm talking about the millions and millions of people in the world that have this trajectory into their lives. And then that stroke, that hypertension will be translated into a stroke. And you may be alive for another 30 years, but the quality of your life is not going to be the same as the one that has run his or her life in red. That is what we need. The policies throughout life, looking at the life course, that will help us as much as possible to keep people above the disability threshold, but also to look at those that are dependent, to think about what does it mean? What does it mean to be dependent below the disability threshold because you are depressed? And I don't need to tell you, you are the professionals dealing with depression, what a bleak future you have in front of you if you don't have access to services and treatment to deal with depression. Well, to put this framework into practice, because it's all very well to have a graph and to have a framework, but you don't show how it works in practice, we have examples. It's how to create an age-friendly society. And each age-friendly society will look different, because you have to listen to the voices of the people that live in that community in order to design what is appropriate to your island, which will be different across the canal. We need for that a bottom-up approach. We have to listen, 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 involve, include, and see who is going to benefit from our wisdom, our services. And we have to promote more and more an intergenerational dialogue, because the same gadgets and devices that are wonderful can also be pernicious, putting barriers across generations so that there will not be the same dialogue that in old days, and I'm not glorifying the old days, was there in an extended family. But also you need a top-down approach. What's the point of listening to the voices if you're not going to do anything with? And that is not only the public sector. That is also for the private sector, increasingly involved in the design and response to the needs, especially health needs. So based on the active aging framework, we started the project in 35 cities in 2005, 2006. Simultaneously, we used the same methodology, qualitative research. Big cities like Tokyo, New York, Rio, Mexico City, London. Also smaller cities like Geneva or Liverpool, and an array of small cities of 15, 20,000, so that we could listen to these voices and launch in 2007 the Global Age-Friendly Cities Guide from WHO, which contains a checklist on how to respond to the needs. I'm not here to talk about in detail the age-friendly cities, but just to tell you that what started with these dots, 35 cities, today we have over 1,800, 2,000 cities of all shapes and cities, and communities and states, and we are about to establish an age-friendly New Zealand. We have here in this country, in this city, examples of age-friendly cities using this approach, which is embedded on the active aging policy framework. But we can also use the same approach, listen to the voices, responding together with the users for cities, hospitals, prime health care. In fact, that is how I first met Tony some 20 years ago, launching the WHO prime health care age-friendly. And we can use it for long-term institutions, long-term care, hotels, businesses, states, countries, and services. Let us shape the services according to the needs, listening to the voices. In 2015, so less than a year and a half ago, my International Longevity Center in Brazil, and Tony has mentioned that I'm the president of the ILC Brazil, but also the co-president of the Global Alliance of ILCs, which is present in Britain, in the Netherlands, and in New York, and in India, in China. We have close now to 20 countries, and I have the privilege of being the president of both the Brazil and the Global Alliance, and we have conducted together a very extensive literature review so that we could incorporate all that we have learned since 2002. After all, 15 years ago, a lot has been incorporated, evidence-based new knowledge. So from the active aging policy framework in 2002. We moved to the active aging policy framework. I have only a few examples here, the document. If you are particularly interested, Marie will have one that I have already reserved. It's okay, Marie? And we have incorporated one new pillar. We were talking about health, participation, security, and have now incorporated lifelong learning. Because for your patients that you want to reach out, they need the skills in order to be familiar with the devices, in order to be familiar with new technology. Otherwise, there will be a barrier and they will be unable to use what you have to offer. So we have now the 4 pillars: health, lifelong learning, participation, security. And all this tremendous amount of new knowledge that we have incorporated is expressed now into the graph that I have already explained, calling your attention that the dependence threshold doesn't have to be a line, it can be a bar, because if you set it too high, you will condemn someone with a bad knee to be dependent because this person lives in an environment with physical barriers. If you bring it down, with the same knee, you can now operate, you can be independent. So it depends very much if you live in Norway or if you live in a favela in Rio de Janeiro. And with the same knee, you will be dependent in the favela, but you lead a normal life in a very accessible city such as Barcelona is. But we can do this. At any point of your life, you can intervene individually. I am getting overweight and I'm getting sedentary, my lifestyle is not good, I'm smoking, or my diet is unhealthy. I will do something about it. And when you do something about this, you will remain above the disability threshold for longer. If you can do this individually, for you, we can do this at a societal level through interventions, usually through the public sector, but it could also be a company that will bring these changes. With this longevity revolution, life is no longer like a marathon, a 100-meter sprint, that you come with all force to get to the end of 100 meters. Life has become much more like a marathon. I can say this here in Olympic Barcelona, coming from Olympic Rio. It is to think in terms of how to get prepared for this marathon. Nobody will get to the end of the marathon if you don't have skills and if you don't train. And the message is clear. The message is that the earlier you start to prepare yourself for the marathon, the better, but it's never too late. In this revision of the active aging, we look at many things that were not strong in the WHO document. A rights-based approach, addressing the life course cumulative effect of inequalities, sharper gender focus, much sharper, the strong care perspective, building a culture of care, dealing with finitude, end-of-life issues that were not so present there in the active age in 2002, focus on the contributions of older persons to society, including financial contributions, combating ageism, very strong focus, and resilience. You have mentioned the word. You have even given what for me is like a definition of resilience when you quoted Huber in 2011. Well, let us talk a little about this because it is a key concept of the active aging as we see it today. And ultimately, the policies that we need in order to support individuals are related to accumulating 4 key capitals. And together they will be pathways to resilience. I'm talking about throughout your life course to build your vital capital. capital for health. Making healthier options easier and cheaper is in the essence of dealing with health, and to allow you to build your vital capital because you now have healthier and cheaper options. Because if these options are unreachable, especially for the poor, what's the point? The capital of knowledge, especially at this day and age of tremendous explosion of new technologies and knowledge and how to access. But also, this is related to lifelong learning. It's not only for professionals. A car mechanic that all he would need 20 years ago was mechanics. If he has not learned electronics, he will have lost his job, not at 65, at 40, 45, because now he needs to know electronics as well as mechanics. But also we need to ask ourselves if we are training the right professions. Medical students today are learning medicine in the same way that I did some 45 years ago. You open the anatomy atlas and it is a youth, usually a male, in the apogee of his glory, with all the veins and muscles, everything is clear. And then suddenly you have to find the spleen of a lady that is obese at the age of 88. It will not work. It's not going to work. And I tell medical students often when I address them, you are going to kill your patients without even having the suspicion that you are doing it. Ignorance. You are not learning enough on aging, pharmacology, presentation of diseases. We are not learning enough in terms of the needs and interaction of medications, the dosage, and you kill the patient. And then you say, oh, bad luck. No, it is ignorance that is doing this. But that applies to architects, to policymakers, to politicians, to the media. We have to respond to this longevity revolution. Building your social capital. This is what my father-in-law did. He had lots of people around him throughout his long life because he had cultivated the skills to allow this. Combating the old cliches and the stereotypes, combating ageism. And of course, for those who are lucky, think about building, accumulating your financial capital. This is difficult in our world full of growing inequalities throughout the world. But again, to build the capitals, it is the same mantra. The earlier the better, but it's never too late. You start, even if you are 75, 57, 41, perhaps what you will gain are not going to be so strong as if you had started at 18 or 25, but there will be gains. So based on these four capitals, vital, knowledge, social, financial, we can converge and build our resilience. And this is the key word, perhaps, of this presentation, how to build this resilience. Defined by the International Longevity Center as having access to the reserves needed to adapt to endure, or to grow from the challenges encountered in life. We have to try this hard, because life is not going to end at 45, as it would be for the majority when I was born in my country. It's going to be much longer. And the use of technologies to support and building up this resilience can be critical, both, I believe, at individual and community levels. Last year in October, we organized in Rio, my center, the fourth International Forum, which was focused on the role of design and technology in response to the longevity revolution. Design is a continuous learning experience, not limited to material products. It's not only the gadgets, it's to do with the world we design and we build around us, like the stairs. But the problem solver, that is design, across the 5P domains. It's to do with people, it's to do with place, it's to do with person-centered service, it is to do with products, and it's to do with policies. So if you think in terms of these 5Ps, it's already a very good start. Also, we discussed this at the forum, there is no singular ownership of design, but neither design is sufficiently democratized for it to reach everybody. So too often, design is user-centered rather than user-led. So too often, it is designed for the middle rather than from the edges, so they are excluded. And those are the people that we should really have to bring into the focus of design. It is interdisciplinary rather than transdisciplinary in nature. So too often does design divide groups rather than unite them. Too often is emotion seen as a side product to design rather than a leitmotif, a driving force. Often there is an impulse for big change rather than a transition, an evolution. And too often it is designed for personas. They don't exist. Idealized persons rather than real people. And we have to face real people in order to respond to their real needs. As one of the designers that participate, a British designer now based in Germany, he said at the meeting, design that deals with people is the design that matters. More than ever, there is this need for inclusive design approaches that enhance emotional intelligence, self-reflection, empathy, and resilience. And we believe that resilience can be designed and built. If you look at the determinants of active aging, and these determinants that surround us as individuals, families, communities, societies, nations, and there will be those determinants, pathways for the resilience. And we look again at the graph, and we will put emphasis on care, which is what we are trying to do. We, 2 years ago, had an international forum run by ILC Brazil, which was exactly on how to build a culture of care, a culture of care in order to respond to the longevity revolution. Care. As a medical student, 45 years ago, I was not trained to be a carer. At the very best, I was trained to cure. If you look today, 45 years later, we're still pretty well doing the same. The emphasis on cure of chronic conditions that cannot be cured, but been care. And that is what we are providing through the examples that we will be discussing throughout the day. How to build this culture of care. We're not interested to cure, but interested to provide care to these millions of people suffering from something that can be horrible, which is depression, gray, bleak, dark. And finally, to which extent the active aging model fits with research on positive psychology, well-being, and resilience. There is a body of evidence, a lot of research over the last 10 years doing exactly that. Is there scope to consider well-being and resilience as part of the active aging framework more broadly? That's the question that we are trying to answer now. Putting the evidence from the PREMA model, positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, the PREMA, and people are now increasingly talking about PREMA plus, putting the POMs. So together with PREMA, we have the positive activity, physical activity, optimism, nutrition, and sleep. I have put here in blue all the overlaps that we have already found in association that positive psychology with the Prima Pons approach overlaps nicely with the active aging model. Research on well-being and resilience is mostly based on individuals, and this is one of the challenges. How to take it from the individual and put into a community-based context. These skills at individual levels can be taught, we know this, in order to build these reserves. As these two authors say, there is increasing recognition that resilience is not so much a characteristic of one individual, but rather it occurs as a process of unfolding that unfolds over time within contexts. We have to learn more about this. The research that I believe is needed is how can we extrapolate what we have learned from well-being and resilience research conducted at the individual level to interventions at societal aimed at aging individuals. Reserves is bouncing back from adversity, taking advantage of the opportunities, not focus on the risks, but on the opportunities. As the positive, just as an example, emotion deals with words I had never heard as a medical student, and we often don't hear within the medical context. It's happiness, compassion, gratitude, pride, joy, love, hope. That's what people, individuals, communities need. I'll skip this and just end calling attention to the privilege that we have to be the first generation, really, responding to the longevity revolution. This is the old guy that I mentioned before, my father-in-law. He was 93 when my grandchild, Jasmine, came from London, where my children live, and he was brought by my son to meet the family. The attraction between the old and the young exists. It's us putting the barriers, making it difficult. Because when my granddaughter, aged 6, looked at the old man, they looked each other on the eyes, the way you are seeing here. My son was just clipping. And they came closer, 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 and then they gave a Maori kiss. They touched each other through the nose. We have to build a society where this is going to be possible, not the exception. And developing life course policies that will mean a better aging for us. If you want to see who is the older person in the future, look at yourself in the mirror. It's you. And these older people, they are not interested to build a career. They are going to have a much broader focus. It's the concept of gerativity. They are interested to be mentors, to inspire, to guide, to care. Look again at the expression of these boys, looking at whatever this old lady is doing with her laptop. They're inspired. And I believe that the world tomorrow is going to be better and brighter because there will be more and more people like her to inspire, to guide, and to care for us. You have information about what I'm talking about here in the IOC, not only in Portuguese, but also in English, including copies of the Active Aging. Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation, Tony.
Well, I really enjoyed Alex's presentation, not because he's a friend, it's what he transmits. So now to try to catch up on time, I'll invite you to go to have a break, coffee break, but let's make it a little bit sharper. So let's come back here in 20 minutes. So we would say at 11:20, right? So you can go and have coffee break. again. So, in order to catch up with the agenda, it's good to start now. So, we are going to, this is the first round table. I'm going to moderate the round table. And it will be, the question that I said before is about the why. Why e-mental health? The point of view of the stakeholders. And we've got three panelists here today. I'm going to introduce Ionela Petrea, then Geraldine Bienkowski, and finally Morten Solderman. First, Ionela she's the head of the department at Trimbos University in the Netherlands Institute of Mental Health and Addiction. He's the leader of the EU Compass on Mental Health and Well-being, and she's also a member of the Joint Action in Mental Health and Well-being, leading the Joint Action work package on depression, suicide prevention, and e-health. So, Ionela. The format of this session, this roundtable, they're going to give a talk for 10 minutes, and then afterwards we'll come back to the table. And I wish that you have lots of questions to ask to have an active roundtable. So, Ionela, please.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this meeting in this very, very beautiful building in this beautiful town. I'm very happy to start the roundtable discussion with a brief overview from the governance perspective. As many of you know, mental health policy has started to develop rather late as compared to other fields of health, with the 2001 World Mental Health Report coming only towards the end. At that point, in tobacco control, there have been already some 4 or 5 European action plans. The European Action Plan for Mental Health came in 2005, in January 2005. At EU level, there have been no European policy at that point. In the meantime, WHO progressed, and in 2012 and 2013 has adopted the Global Mental Health Action Plan and the European Strategy for Mental Health. And I also have here, in reference as well to our previous speaker regarding aging, there is also the European Strategy on Aging, which actually has a significant impact on the mental health component. In EU, we had in 2005 a green paper on mental health, which in fact tried to initiate a consultation among member states to see whether they would be interested in going further with the European strategy for mental health. That was unsuccessful, and in 2008 there was an agreement on what was called the Mental Health Pact, which is a document that has been used as a policy document, but in fact doesn't have an actual policy status. It allowed for EC and member states to continue to work together and organize a series of thematic conferences, which culminated with a decision from the Council of Ministers to organize a joint action for mental health in EU. And I wonder how many of you are aware of the joint action for mental health and well-being. May I just raise a hand? All right, so not so many. Well, at EU level, it has been the most significant policy process until that point. It took place between 2002 and 2016. It ended in the beginning of last year with the final conference in Brussels. These are the themes that it covered, and you can see it covered prevention and depression, and connected to it e-health, and I led in particular this component of e-health. What is interesting is that since the member states have not specified e-health as a topic, it could not be a separate work package, and members of the joint action, which were in fact most of the European countries, decided to include e-health, to put it together with prevention of depression, since many interventions on e-health focus on depression. But of course, e-health is relevant for also the other fields of topics addressed in the joint action, which are community-based mental health care and social inclusion, mental health at workplace, mental health in schools, and mental health in all policies. After the end of the joint action, there has been an agreement on what would be a framework for action for member states in Europe on mental health. However, it was necessary to ensure there is an instrument to monitor the implementation of the framework for action, and that is the Compass for Mental Health and Well-being. And I reckon since you haven't heard so much about the joint action, you don't know much about the Compass either. So I would like to introduce you a bit to it. It is a platform that aims to monitor the progress achieved in the field of mental health and well-being in member states and at the level of non-governmental stakeholders. And it aims to further the EU agenda on mental health and well-being and to ensure a policy dialogue. The Compass tries to achieve, has three main deliverables. One relates to production of a number of scientific papers which are consulted upon with member states and stakeholders and are afterwards declared to be consensus papers. So they are not a policy paper, they don't have a status of a policy paper, that's why it's called consensus paper. And what I'd like to draw your attention to is to the fact that throughout my presentation, you've noticed that I've mentioned a few times this is not an actual policy, this is not a policy paper, this is not a policy document. And that is the reality, except for the WHO documents, which are policy documents, the action plan and the strategy, nothing else is. They are policy-related documents, but they don't have a status, which means there isn't a mandate to enforce them. That is the main thing. So the Compass engages with member states and tries to persuade them to report on it, but doesn't have a strong mandate. No minister has signed up to the framework of action of the joint action to say, from now on, I'm going to implement that. So it's a soft mandate. So we try to work around that, and we organize consultations, and that is one important means of engaging with them. And we do so at national level, but as well at European level. Once a year, we organize a European Forum for Mental Health and Well-being in Luxembourg. We had it last year in October. This year will be in June. And we hope to see as many of you as possible at that forum, because it, as you see here, it invites governments, but as well non-governmental organizations, researchers, users and carers, professional organizations, and so on. And finally, it aims to disseminate information to make it as well known as possible. What is it that is mental health policy in Europe? What is it that is good practices? What are good practices? What is it that member states should aim to implement? Now, this is in brief the landscape of policy in mental health in Europe. I would like to narrow down a bit now on the findings of the joint action for mental health on the package of e-mental health. And we try to understand why is it that there would be a need for European action for mainstreaming. Why is it that member states can't do it on their own? And what we found out throughout the implementation of the joint action is the fact that there is a need to have a strategic planning for e-health intervention at the level of the health system, as compared to having scattered development of interventions at, for example, research level, but which are eventually not picked up and implemented further on. There is a need for addressing quality and ethical considerations, and that emerge from the fact that there isn't a clarity on what is it that is acceptable, how ways of working, for example, with ICT industry. They are our very, very important partners in e-health, but do we know already what is it okay and what is not in working with them? There's also a need to engage and ensure coordination of professionals across EU. Many times professionals have been seen as hinderers of implementation of e-health, but that of course doesn't need to be the case. And we worked quite closely with the Association of Psychiatrists and of Psychologists, and to try to understand what is it that e-health can, how is it that e-health policies can be shaped in a way that they can be engaged rather than hinder the process. We also understood that there is a need for improving the usability of e-health interventions, since many of them are there, but in fact the adherence is very low. And I'm aware of the time. And finally, there is a need to ensure cross-border transferability of e-health. And I think all of these needs, in fact, are rather well reflected in the presentations we heard earlier from Professor Rieper about what this project has achieved. Clearly, your project has addressed quite a few of these challenges that we identified in the joint action as challenges for policymakers. And I'd like to end by saying, and I hope we'll have the chance also to have a dialogue on that later on, that action at policy level is quintessential if we want to mainstream e-health. It is very tempting to keep our head down and focus on our individual narrow projects and in implementing more and more, developing more interventions. But unless we work actually horizontally together and engage with the decision makers, those who eventually fund, but also have the ability to mainstream e-health, to make sure that e-health intervention has the same status as a face-to-face intervention from the point of view of funding and access to it from the user's perspective, we are perhaps less likely to succeed in our efforts. So I really strongly suggest that we advocate for a policy perspective and for engaging with governance on e-health. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ionela. And now we are going to enter to a different perspective, from the perspective, the point of view of the societal researcher, its relevance from a societal and economic standpoint. I've got the pleasure to give the floor to Geraldine Bienkowski. She's trained as a clinician psychologist and worked for over 20 years in adult mental health services, lately as head of psychology in community and primary care in Edinburgh. In 2007, she moved to the NHS Education for Scotland. NHS Education for Scotland is the organisation which delivers training for healthcare staff in Scotland. In NHS Education Scotland, she took the post of lead for psychological therapies. She is now involved in strategic planning for the training of multidisciplinary staff in the delivery of a range of evidence-based psychological interventions and sits on the Scottish Government mental health delivery team. So, Geraldine.
Well, I just thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. And I'd just like to congratulate MasterMind on hugely overperforming on all its targets, and that's wonderful to hear. Tony's going to be very strict about time, and I'm talking about societal and economic standpoint in relation to e-mental health. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then if he cuts me off, you'll still have heard the end of the story. So I'm going to say the incidence of mental health problems is high. The effects and the costs are high, both for individuals and society. But we have effective interventions. So it's in everyone's interest that those who would benefit from those interventions have access to them, and that e-mental health can make a significant contribution to increasing access. So you can now just do your emails or whatever, and I'll fill in the detail. Okay. All right. So just to, in case people didn't immediately realise it, I do come from Scotland, and that's the Scottish Parliament. I was going to put up pictures of mountains, but then you have plenty of mountains in Spain, so that wouldn't impress you at all. Right, so mental illness, just to remind ourselves of the scale of the problem, and none of this will be news to any of you. In fact, none of anything I say will be news to any of you. But mental illness, 38% of all ill health in developed countries. So it's a huge problem, that's a huge number of people. And if we look at the actual percentage of people, then certainly in the UK, 19% of people at any one time will be suffering from a diagnosable mental illness. Most of those will be suffering from anxiety or depression. The economic and social effects, So just mental illness being defined as a significant and persistent distress and impairment of functioning with causes which are psychological or psychosocial. And it's the persistent distress and impairment of functioning which cause the distress and the costs both to the individual and to society, obviously. Studies on quality of life demonstrate that mental illness causes more of the suffering in our society than physical illness does, or than poverty or unemployment does. And whenever I'm talking about money and economic things, I think you can lose sight of the fact that this is causing distress, this is causing people pain, and that's why we're in the business. As many people die in the world from suicide as from homicide and warfare combined, and about 90% of the people who kill themselves are mentally ill when they do it, which is a huge cost to society in terms of eroding the societal well-being and social capital. Mental illness in childhood, so moving on now to societal and economic effects, correlates with truancy, exclusion from school, drug use, self-harm, and later on crime. Most of the people who are in prison have had mental illness in childhood or have mental illness at the time. Mental illness and poverty are linked. Poverty can be both a causal factor and a consequence of mental ill health. So you can lose your job because of depression, and you can fall into the category of people living in poverty, and people who are brought up in poverty have a higher chance of developing mental illness. And there's a sort of cycle of deprivation there in terms of families being affected by mental illness. Certainly in the UK, 44% of people on disability living allowance have mental health problems. So that means that the society is paying disability allowance to a huge number of people. So that's cost in terms of unemployment, but it's also loss of tax revenue if people were in work. So it's not just you're paying out the disability benefits, but you're losing tax revenue. Failure to treat comorbid mental health problems also decreases the effectiveness and increases the costs of physical health care. And that's something which people don't always recognise, or is not always generally recognised, because people with physical health conditions do worse if they have a mental health problem which isn't treated. And that's just a small illustration of that. The lines in light blue are the costs for patients who are not depressed, and the lines in dark blue are the costs of treatment for patients with depression. And up at the end of coronary disease and heart failure, it's a huge additional cost. And of course, people who are depressed and have a coronary episode are likely to die sooner than other people. And just looking at the cost to the economy then, we have about 7% of national income, about 7% of national income is attributable to all the effects of mental health problems: unemployment, sick days, absenteeism, crime, physical health care, additional costs. So what should we be doing, and what are some of the barriers? Well, clearly, this is a huge number of people. If you're talking about 19% of the population, in effect, we treat, and most countries, I think, in the developed world, treat round about 1 or 2% of the population in relation to mental health problems. So there's a huge potential here for a prevention agenda, an early intervention agenda, for delivering effective interventions, evidence-based interventions, in a way which is efficient and cost-effective. And we will not, as demand for this service rises, and it does rise as people become more aware of mental health problems and the options open to them, then we can't possibly meet that without being more effective, cost-effective. So if we did treat mental health problems effectively, we'd be reducing human suffering, getting people back into the workplace, reducing poverty in the longer term and reducing the future level of mental health problems, supporting families, building social capital. And in terms of the economy, we'd have reduced welfare, social security payments, increased tax revenue, decreased the cost of physical health care, reduced crime and the costs of crime. So in an ideal world, we would be able to affect all of those things. The barriers are the scale of the problem, especially if we look at traditional service models, and people have talked about that this morning. Generally poor access to services, lack of investment in services, and all kinds of financial constraints from austerity, more or less, in different countries. the demographic shift or the longevity situation, and the question of parity of esteem, because mental illness, although it accounts for 23% of the burden of disease, only attracts, certainly in the UK, about 13% of the health budget and 5% of the health research budget, so an inequity of provision there. So the contribution of mental health then, it's an evidence-based intervention, it's effective, it has the potential to scale up relatively quickly and become widely available. It's suited to prevention and early intervention agendas because of that breadth of coverage that you get. It's less resource intensive in terms of individual face-to-face treatment. It can replace face-to-face treatment in the case of computerized CBT, CCBT. We know that that's the case. It can supplement traditional models and reduce time in one-to-one therapy, and we have evidence for that too. And it can improve outcomes and by giving a quicker response and a more immediate response to patient in real time, as people have mentioned earlier. It can increase reach in remote communities and hard-to-engage groups of various different kinds. It can increase people's privacy and reduce the sense of stigma, because certainly I've heard people say, well, I don't mind, doing my thought records online and immediately if I'm doing them on my phone and people just think I'm texting somebody, than if I bring out sheets and start to fill in negative automatic thought or whatever. And it also has advantages, I think, in itself. I think it reduces this risk of dependency on the services and gives people more control over agents and more agency over the process of developing their own healthcare. There are some challenges. There are challenges around acceptability in some groups. And of course, there are the technology costs, which you can't ignore, and there's costs for hardware. We certainly have an issue with outdated operating systems, Windows 2 or whatever operates in the community, and connection speed and those kinds of things. But I think that in the end, what we have to convince government to do is to invest in the short term, to save in the long term, and to build the societal capital. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Geraldine. And now I'm going to introduce Morten Soderman. He's going to focus on the health professionals, its significance from a clinical perspective. I'm going to let you know who Professor Morten is. He's a global and migrant health professor at the Center for Global Health at the Clinical Institute of the University of Southern Denmark. He's a senior consultant in infectious diseases and head of the migrant health clinic at the Department of Infectious Diseases at the Odense University Hospital. Also member of the Migration, Ethnic and Health Research Network, MISU, M-E-S-U, co-founder and co-chair of the Danish Society for Migrant Health. And finally, through the Migrant Health Clinic, initiated cross-country research network in the EU and on health and communication among ethnic minorities, and established training in migrant health at university and college level. In 2013, he initiated a national initiative to start a screening of newly arrived refugees. A very hot topic now. So please, Morten Soderman, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to share some of the experience that we have from this very, very dark corner of healthcare. One of the things I learned very early when we started this clinic in 2007 is that over 92% of interventions aimed at reducing inequality in healthcare are aimed at adapting patients to this healthcare system. And only about 6 or 7% of interventions are aimed at adapting the system to patients. So this is an effort or intended effort to try and adapt the system to the real patients there. Very often doctors think they have two tasks. One is to try and ease their own sort of everyday tasks, and they often use technology for that. And then if they have time, spare time, they'll probably have a look at patient needs, but only if they have time. Sometimes technology helps, and we found out that actually going from the physical presence of interpreters in our clinic to web or video transmitted interpretation, we actually have some opportunities to compare the physical presence of interpreters and the web or video interpreted communication, how that works. And that's some of the experience I want to share with you. But just imagine the situation that these immigrants and refugees face. They are refugees, they are minorities, they have a lot of stigmatizing illnesses, they're stressed, they're afraid, they are often bringing with them war trauma, they have often very sensitive and unsolved family issues, they are met with and face cultural barriers, and to add to the fun of it, they also have a serious language barriers, which means that we have to introduce a third person to this communication, the interpreter, which is actually really an irrelevant person, but it's actually going to be the most important person. He's the only wise person in that room. He's the only person capable of sort of translating what's going on in the room. So it's actually the most intelligent person, but also the most irrelevant person to the patients. So these patients suffer from too much stress. So I think one of the major tasks often to sort of meet patients is to reduce their stress so they can listen. Now, in the old days, when we started with sort of physical presence of interpreters, there was a lot of people in that room. So it's almost overcrowding. Just by the crowding, you could be very, very stressed. And as one patient said, I feel I'm in a movie, but I can't get out of the movie. So stress reduction is essential. So you have to reduce all the disruptive elements that can actually sort of disrupt the patient from what's actually the main thing here. It's always a difficult task for patients to express what they really want from the doctor in any language. But having an interpreter, that adds to that stress and the situation. And we've tried all sorts of things to solve this, with pictograms and simple palas and dictionaries and apps you can get now. But all they do is reduce sort of communication and content, and people are more interested in what these pictures are about than actually what the content of the communication is. So they're sort of distracted from the real stuff here. We discovered that patients are actually most confident talking to doctors at home. So we ended up giving all our nurses and doctors a mobile phone so patients can text them in the middle of the night or in the early mornings, and they know somebody will read it. And very often that's enough to reduce stress. So finding out where patients are best sort of suited and seated for conversations is actually part of the task here. And sometimes it's at home on a sofa with a mobile phone. So trust is, of course, one of the key issues for medical doctors. But how do you build trust when you have a third person in the room? And do you have enough time for this, which is also very often a problem with these patients. And this video interpretation has actually solved some of these issues. Very often these patients have very sort of contradicting needs, and very often these needs are difficult to meet in a healthcare system. We want them to disclose honestly what their problems are and what their possible solutions are, but they also need privacy. They want us to be close to them, and still they want us to be far away. They want us to be very intimate, but also professional. They want us to be humane, but we need technology sometimes to do that. So how do you mix humaneness with technology? Patients often want to be able to contact the healthcare workers, the nurses and doctors, when they have a problem, right now. But we don't want to be disrupted. The system doesn't want to be disrupted. So how do we deal with that? Very often, this technology has solved many of these sort of dilemmas that we have. This technology actually forces us, the health professionals, and the patients to focus on what are we talking about, what is the substance here, and how do we understand each other. Because very often what you see is a face and nothing else. People will have, what about the non-verbal communication, all that? That comes on a third place. First place is eye contact, trust, and ability to understand what is the context here. And this technology actually facilitates that, concentrating on what is actually going on here. Research has shown us that it actually increases the level of information. It's a higher level of understanding that we see, and there's a better flow of communication. Oddly enough, the communication flows easier in this way. And it very often reduces stress that this person, the extra person, is not present in the room. You can actually talk about a lot of difficult things that you couldn't talk about before. One strange thing as well is that very often therapists, they like pauses. When you think, you ask something and the patient has to really consider. Pauses are difficult when you have physical persons present. it's easier to handle a pause when it's just a patient or an interpreter on a screen. So pauses, which are actually quite crucial in many therapies, are easier to handle in this way. You can actually adapt to everyday life. Sometimes we have network meetings with the family on the phone here and the social worker on the phone here and the interpreter there, because the microphones are so good and the screen is so good that you can actually have a whole network meeting interpreted on a 5-minute platform. You can have a look at documents. The camera is so good that you can actually read documents in Arab or Russian or whatever. So you can also sort of solve problems when they're there, when they have the papers. And as one of the patients pointed out, which I didn't realize until then, the interpreter can't see my body. He doesn't know my body, which is for many people very, very crucial in this sense. So this sort of just having the face is enough for patients to feel less stressed and less sort of close to the interpreters, so they speak more freely. It also allowed us to test other ways of talking to patients. Out of necessity, we have some remote areas where you don't have very many doctors, but a lot of refugees for some reason. So I suggested one of these municipalities that we try and test that I have the outpatient clinic run from the university hospital. So I was in my office with the screen there, and they organized an outpatient clinic at the local healthcare center there, and the interpreter. So I was sitting alone in the university hospital, and the interpreter and the patient were there in the distance. And that was even easier for them, because then you had sort of two fellow citizens speaking their own language in a room on their own. It was a nicer discussion, it was an easier discussion. I was just trying to manage the discussion at the other end, which actually succeeded. It was easier to talk about difficult things. It was easier for me to sort of govern this, the communication flow by not being there. So maybe doctors don't have to be where the patient is. So sometimes you have to mix and have technology that can actually facilitate that part of it. There's actually some interesting research showing that, contrary to what we think, that the physical encounter with doctors is actually more honest and a more honest conversation than with video or with a computer encounter that you have. But in fact, patients are much more honest when they're talking to a computer. That's the end of medical job. I'm sorry. But you can actually get more honesty out of computerized, a bit more by video and not very much by the physical encounter. So we have to play a bit more with these technologies, because sometimes they can actually give us more what we want, honesty. And I think we should have a look at how patients feel, because sometimes we have a tendency to sort of argue that all the problems patients have are about feelings and emotions. Sometimes they're about the situation that we set up when we talk to patients. And maybe we should use technology more to reduce stress so emotions don't sort of fill so much in these conversations. So technology can actually help us a lot, but sometimes we have to learn from minority patient groups like these to learn it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Morgan. I would like to invite you now. I think we haven't got much time to catch up with the schedule, but I would invite you to ask questions to the panelists if there is any. This is what we were aiming you to participate and discuss. I think there are 3 different approaches here that they combine each other. So there are some links with what you mentioned, Ionela, about the cross-border approach. So this cross-border approach with what Morten said. So I think there is a strong link. But at the same time, when we say cross-border, normally it's the regions or the countries next to your where you live. And this situation of migration is completely different, because you are dealing with so many different cultures, you know. So this is a challenge. In the involvement that you've had in the joint action and in the European Commission, have you had this approach or thought about cross-border is one way of tackling the issue, and then the migration is another one?
Mm-hmm.
We actually
Is this?
At the last Compass, for the first, which was also the most recent Compass Forum in October last year, in fact, we had a topic as an emerging topic, migration, actually. So we actually gave it space within this program because we find it is a very, very important topic. Within the context of the joint action, when we talk about cross-border healthcare, in fact, we talk about it in the language that ECE uses. For example, if people from England come retire in Spain, then we have an issue of cross-border healthcare. Right. Then there are some arrangements, some legal arrangements between the two countries on how to tackle that. And that is a context of, we tried to put e-health in the same perspective. What kind of arrangements are being made? So an intervention is being developed in Netherlands, and we would like to make it available to the entire Europe. It may be focused on migrants, and some of our interventions, for example, are focused on minority groups. Maybe Turkish minority. Turkish minority exists in many, many European countries. How can we take advantage of the fact that an intervention in their language for this population group has been developed in one setting and can transfer it in a different setting, like perhaps in Germany, where there is a large population group, but also in Denmark. So that was the approach we took at that point in cross-border healthcare. How can we make such arrangements? At the moment, there aren't any. At the moment, we have projects like this one, which happens to be funded at European level, which means one intervention can be used in more settings. But otherwise, if one intervention is developed by one particular organization in one particular country, there isn't a setup that allows this transfer of, healthcare, really, because e-health is healthcare. So I'm quite curious, how would you see it from your perspective?
I think one of the strangest things I've seen in this field is that you can actually, talking about Turkish immigrants, for example, that they have completely different disease pattern all over Europe. So they have one disease pattern in Denmark and then they have another one in Germany. They live longer in Germany, they live longer in France, they live shorter in Denmark. So I think that there's sort of a whole set of data information that we aren't using. Why do they live longer in France and Germany? One of the things is that you have more Turkish doctors. And I think that's one of the overlooked issues here, that a lot of low-hanging fruit, as we say, would be in educating more bilingual health professionals and psychologists, because that's really, really needed, and it actually helps. Somali refugees in Denmark, they travel to Germany. Why? Because they only know German doctors from Somalia, because they go there and they operate their eyes, their eye diseases. So they think German doctors are better than Danish doctors. So they rather go to Germany and pay 20,000 Danish kroner to see a Somali-friendly doctor, I think. So there are a lot of sort of patterns that we haven't really analyzed. How can we benefit from these? Because they actually help. And a lot of people go to their home country if they have mental illness, because they're afraid the psychiatrists and psychologists don't understand them properly. So they go back and they get some comfort and they come back and are less stressed. So there's a lot of information that we don't use that could actually help us a lot without too much technology, actually.
So thank you. Any question from the audience? No questions? So yes, thank you very much. There is a micro there. It's going to come next to you. Please introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Clayton Hamilton from WHO Regional Office for Europe. Morten, I just wanted to ask you, with the remote care model that you demonstrated, how much of the success is actually due to the communication skills of the clinician? Because communicating on a remote link as opposed to face-to-face is a completely different set of interpersonal skills. And that's not something that clinicians are typically taught. It's not something that comes natural to a lot of clinicians. So I just wondered, how much of that do you consider to be a factor in actually the success of what you're doing there?
I think you actually need three different skills. You need the technological skill of talking in that way with the screen. You need the ability to talk through an interpreter, which most medical doctors or psychologists have never been taught. Is actually quite a skill. And then you need your sort of basic communicative skills. You have to talk slow, you have to be simple in your messages. So it's actually three different skills that I play at the same time. And we have a lot of sort of courses exactly on these three issues, because most doctors don't know how to do it. Plain and simple. Patients are actually, patients are patients. They talk how they do anyway. The funny thing, when we had this remote station where I was at the university hospital and patients were in the remote area, they actually very quickly forgot the camera and the screen and talked to the interpreter like they would normally do. So I think it's more on the professional side, as you say, that we have something to work on there. It's really on the professional skills of talking in that way and organizing a communication with somebody who's probably not had too many years of schooling, and also with an interpreter who's probably also not had too many years of schooling. So you have you have a lot of different languages at play at the same time, besides all the skills. I think it should be a subject in medical school and psychology as well to do it.
The last question before we go to the next round table. Marco, and there are two questions, so I'll give the floor to the two questions. So, yeah.
Hello, Margaret Maxwell from University of Stirling. I'm just going to try and bring this session together with what we heard this morning by asking, what do we know about usability and acceptability of e-mental health amongst our ageing population? So is it a solution for the ageing population?
Perhaps actually we should refer that question to Professor Power, but certainly looking at what I know from the English IAP studies, the ageing population actually engaged better in IAPT with the e-mental health than the young population, which was a bit counterintuitive. But I don't know if Kevin wants to say something about that.
We've done a study in Scotland, in the Tayside, looking at adults, older adults, aged over 80 years of age. It was a patient preference study, so they had the option of treatment as usual for depression or treatment as usual plus beating the blues. I'll probably be too loud if I use this. So I might just do without it. And in that study, basically, the older adults, there's a lot of stigma about older adults and e-health. So that when they had the choice, some of them took to it like ducks to water, and they weren't IT literate. But what they actually got out of it wasn't just to improve their mental health. They actually got mastery, they got skills, and they were able to go and tell their grandchildren, I can actually use a computer now. So on the basis of that, we're rolling out computer. I have to use this, sorry, I hate using these things. On the basis of that, we're rolling out a programme of e-health across healthcare establishments in Tayside, and we've got money from NHS Tayside to evaluate that. So I think it's a population that's been under-researched, under-evaluated, and I think that reflects a degree of ageism amongst researchers as well, that I think that has to be kind of reversed.
So now there is Marco. You wanted to ask something? Oh. Yeah? No, please.
Marco D'Angelo Antonio, Health Information Management, Brussels. I mean, I heard what you said before about the fact that we should include that in the curricula of health students in university. I've heard this message several times. Who can influence that? Because actually there are quite a lot of university professors here in the room. If they don't do that, who else should do that? I think that, as you said, the medical studies are not up to date any longer, but somebody has to take the initiative to make the change.
Nilla, you first.
Well, you can come to Odense University Hospital because we have that training there. Simple. You're welcome. Well, they can come and see, but it's fairly easy. I mean, it's no big deal. They have communication training. You just have to add the sort of interpreter skills that we talked about. And we have, for psychologists as well, we have exactly the same module, the same skills that they need. So it's sort of two different studies that we use the same sort of training for. It's only a couple of hours every second year. And they actually are better now.
Ionela?
Yes, if I may add, we recognize this challenge as well in the joint actions, and we engaged, in fact, with the European Psychiatric Association and European Psychological Association, and we discussed it with them. And the European Psychiatric Association actually developed their own course for e-health for psychiatrists, and it's not rolled out, I think, already. But they seriously consider how to embed in the basic training of psychiatrists the necessary skills for them to actually use e-health in their regular practice. So it is not, it's a very, very relevant question, and clearly it's something that people have start to work on.
Thank you. Any final remarks from, no, Geraldine? You would like to add something
about
else?
the elderly issue. If you show people how smart this is, they will adapt it readily. I mean, we have many elderly people that are so tired of all these nurses coming to their home, filling up the home all day long. But if you can sort of use an iPad to contact them, say, are you okay? Did you take your medication? What is your blood sugar? Good night. And there's 3 calls on an iPad. They're so happy to use it instead of all these people running around in their homes. So it's easy. Just show them.
Okay, I would like to thank you. Let's applaud Ionela, Geraldine, and Morten. Thank you so much. And we can move to the next roundtable.
Yes. So here we are in Barcelona. 3 years after the start, also in Badalona it was. And now, well, this session tried to look back a little bit on how we obtained these high numbers of patient inclusion and these high numbers of data that we have in our possession at this moment. And I have I've invited some co-workers, colleagues in the project. So Niels Kolstrup from Norway, Dr. Niels Kolstrup, his almost last working day of his working life, I think. So that's a celebration in its own. The other thing, we also have Dr. Anneke van Schijk from GGZ in Geest in the Netherlands, and patients being represented by Erik van der Eycken from Game in Europe. So what just a little bit of a reflection. I think what we've done in this project in 3 years' time is a kind of a synchronized jump, and we landed on our feet, as you can see. And it is not easy to do this, of course. It needs some practice, especially if you take into account that the number, the heterogeneity that we have in this project concerning the services, but also the people involved, the different levels involved, patients, professionals, but also administration, support, etc. It's really complex interventions in routine practice, and perhaps we only scratched a little bit of the surface on how this happens in practice, but I think it is at least a major achievement to do these kinds of jumps in Europe. 2 results. One highly debated already issue is, of course, reach, and I think there are a number of opportunities in these kinds of services to indeed extend reach. And these are the numbers. It's what we've obtained in 3 years' time, or actually 2 years' time of service deployment. And what you see this per year is that in the wave one partners, at least a high ambition was apparent, but the actual reach, you can see at least some points for improvement. Doesn't necessarily mean that these patients didn't receive treatment, of course, but not treatment through these services. Versus wave two, where you have perhaps a more modest or a different approach to approach your patients. There is a more modest also numbers on completion and on reaching those patients. One very high challenge we had to deal with in this project is to adhere to local procedures. It's routine practice. So also in this wave one, what we've seen is that the majority of the patients were referred by GPs, by primary care to these services. And we come back to that later as well, but one of the barriers that came in discussing this issue with healthcare professionals came to the fore is perhaps the service type. So where is this service positioned in the entire, well, let's say, service palette to mental health care? As for instance, in Scotland, as a first step in a stepped care approach, getting a lot of people into the service in the end, but perhaps we need to look carefully to what it does with the actual completion of those patients. Also awareness, an issue, awareness amongst patients, but also awareness amongst professionals of the service and knowledge about the service, and participation biases by the patient in terms of expectations of what mental health care for them should entail. And to that end, I would like to invite Erik to highlight a little bit more about the acceptance of the patient in terms of these services and these biases that might be there. Erik.
Thank you, Chris. If you don't mind, I'm going to sit just down, practical reasons. First of all, I want to thank Carmen, but she's not here, that I don't have to wear a tie, because I sent an email asking for the dress code and she don't mind. Anyway, so I'm going to have a few words on the patient's acceptance, meaning that I saw already from different speakers that there are many things that are reflected already in these patients' acceptance, especially particularly from Helene and also from Alexander. Many findings and a lot of experience has been gained by or during the trials, the field trials, in the different countries, different cultures, and so on and so on. Now, as GAMI in Europe, being an organization of 25 national patient organizations, we could install a patient advisory board just to see how it is in the countries that did not be or were not involved in these field trials. And you can imagine there's a lot of differences in different countries, and it was a huge task to get all these things summarized. But anyway, I succeeded in it to get the most important, let's say the most important points with respect to the patient acceptance. Very important what we heard in these patient advisory boards. By the way, we're talking about 15 to 25 participants. During every meeting, we had about 3 meetings. We used a questionnaire that we had sent in advance, and then we discussed these questionnaire with the different patients. First of all, what came out of the many discussions that it is very important for the patients that they get enough explanation and that there is a human face still behind this e-mental health system, I would say. Just because of the fact that I only have 5 minutes, I'm gonna just restrict to the CCBT. I'm not gonna talk about the video conferencing. So also with that human interface, I think we also saw that it's very important that patients that have already gone through or already having dealt with this CCBT, they can talk to other patients. So the contact of peers is very important. Quite logical, I think, in point 2, the usability. I put there native language, but it's not only the native language, it's the language in general. I mean, Pictionaries, Pictionaries, so, and other understandable language, because you have to know that when a person is depressed, it's not that easy to understand or work with difficult words. It has to, of course, to be attractive looking. So if you talk to a computer or you talk to a screen, of course, the look has to be very attractive. Another point that was very important for the patients is the guarantee privacy and also the guarantee security. Many times it was expressed that the computer line, the internet connection, had to be very good, secured, protected, and also very good working, of course. With respect to the guaranteed privacy, it was also important for the patient that he could do it, of course, in his home environment, and on top of that, if possible, in a special room. So he could, let's say, ask a family member or another person to cooperate, but preferably not. Customized application, I think it speaks for itself. Very important for the customer was that there was a customization. As already mentioned also by Alexander, we have to listen to the customer. It has to be customer-led. Some patients gave some examples of start with a kind of self-scanning so that I see myself in this computer program or in this therapy. And then I think the last point, yes, it should not finish with some, as we did in the file trial, maybe 1 year or 1.5 years. You should not finish by that, but you should keep some monitoring of the patient's progress. And I put there appropriate staff. It does not have to be a psychologist, or it does not have to be a psychiatrist. It can also be a nurse who is involved in this, let's say, in this therapy. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop. Just to let you know that you can find more details about our final board meeting on the website. We have put a vlog on there, and you can see all the conclusions of this final patient board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Erik, for your contribution in that, and also I think the role in the project in itself. Perhaps we could. It's always a difficulty to get everybody online at the right time, but these points definitely are important to take into account for the next level. So now turning to the healthcare professionals, there we talk a little bit now about the engagement of healthcare professionals. This refers to their decision to adopt this new way of treatment, providing new ways of treatment, and the actual initial activities to do that. So it's not really about adhering to the treatment manuals or so, but much more the step before that, trying to give in and trying to engage with the service by the professionals. And what we've seen from the data, and this includes both qualitative and quantitative data, is again this limited awareness and familiarity with the service definitely works as a barrier for referrers, for instance, for GPs to refer to these patients to these services. If they don't know the service, then of course you will not be able to do this, to refer to the service. But also, again, the different expectations, but then not by the patient themselves, but in the perception by the professional. So the question of what my patient needs something different than what this service is being able to offer to my patients. This is a recurring theme in the focus groups, for instance. What a definite facilitator is being able to quickly provide treatment to a patient and not having them transferred to a long waiting list for face-to-face treatment. Definitely was one of the key elements that came to the fore for a healthcare professional to engage in these services. But also being or receiving appropriate technical and administrative support and coordination work to have these services run is being viewed as very important. So now I would like to ask Niels to highlight a little bit your experiences in Norway in terms of what you as a GP, but also as a partner in the project, have been doing for implementing these services.
Yes, thank you very much for being allowed to speak here. I will just tell you a little bit about the situation in Norway. We are GPs on a list system. We have 5,000 GPs that serves 5 million Norwegians, and nearly all Norwegians have a GP. So we have about 1,000 patients each GP. And we have a shift away from expensive specialist care to primary care, which means that all the hospitals discharge the patients earlier. They try to avoid getting patients into the specialist health care, which really leaves the GPs with quite a burden, and it's increasing every day. And that is a stress on the GP care. What we generally see, and I think most of the GPs would agree on that we need an alternative for drug treatment for depression. And something that I try to stress mainly is the way GP looks at patients. It is surprising that this is not very natural, but we look at patients in a lifespan. The perspective is lifespan, and it's very important to notice that. That means that what we can teach patients on day one, we get rewarded 3 years later. That means that if we can teach people mental health and mental well-being in our practice, we can save time. We can save the healthcare system, we can save ourselves time. So we need to do something else than just grab a tablet. And most GPs, in Norway at least, would probably agree in that. But they would think, what should I then do? So what we have then shown in MasterMind, and that's been very inspiring, is that we can use, for example, video to treat patients at home. And as Morten was saying, this is a very interesting way of looking at it, because we usually say now when we're going to use the video, you need to have met your GP already, or else it doesn't work. But for young people, for example, they're much more confident when they're home. For old people, of course, don't have to transport. It's fantastic. You can sit home, you can do that. There are some economic problems with that, but it is now possible to use video with the new technology, that we don't need a studio, we don't need any fancy stuff. We can treat people at home, and we have shown that. We can establish video collaboration between GPs and specialists, and we are doing that at the present. And it's very inspiring because it is cross the border, the huge border between primary and specialist healthcare. So if we can keep doing that, what would happen is also that we transfer knowledge from the specialist healthcare to the general practitioner, but also the other way. Suddenly you understand each other's working conditions, and it's very important, and MasterMind have helped. And then we can see that the technical and structural and economical barriers can be overcome, and we have done that in Norway, and we continue to work on that. It is difficult, but it is not impossible, and especially with the new technology, we can use the new technology to overcome these barriers, and then we have to work politically to overcome the economical barriers. So we then have to adapt internet treatment tools to the way GPs work. We were just discussing that in the pause here, because a GP's mind is turn over patients fast, but have them again in 1 month, in 1 week, and so on and so forth. So we need fast, easy, accessible teaching tools for GPs and their patients at the same time. I think that's what was on my slide.
Thank you very much, Niels.
And it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, and we stick a little bit around primary care, and because, and again, the combination with engaging healthcare professionals and the question of training. What I found in the data was, especially in wave 1, and here again the majority of respondents were in primary care, only 1.9% received a training in CCBT, and what also was, is that that training was often of a technological focus. And what we've seen in the focus group is, is that these primary care referrers indicated, so the GPs themselves indicated that infamiliarity with the contents of the program is definitely a barrier to refer to these services. Unknown makes unwanted, and that is, of course, well, self-explanatory in a way. So the question is a little bit, indeed, do primary care professionals be trained in CCBT, or at least in a minimal way of know not only the technical aspects, but also the content? So, Niels, what do you think about that?
I think absolutely. I've been teaching in medical school for God knows how many years now, and we really need a new look at the way we have to do this, because the healthcare service is racing ahead of the technology is racing ahead of the healthcare service, and we need the students to know that their future, their work life is going to be fundamentally different from ours in the way that, amongst others, Morten was talking about. We will be using technology to reach the patients in a different way, and we would use it. All these technical guys, they say, oh, it's most important is that you can do much better diagnosis and so on and so forth. Well, we could use it for care as well. And really, I think the students need to know that. And I'm happy to say that I was invited to speak a little bit about the future of medical education in Tromsø, and I hope I will be able to convey this message that the technical future is going to be very different for clinicians.
Okay, thank you very much. It's now turning to secondary care. Dr. Anneke van Schaik, psychiatrist in the Netherlands. Can you enlighten us a little bit on your experiences with MasterMind in specialized care?
Yes, of course, I'd like to do that. I'll first say something about the situation in the Netherlands when we started MasterMind. There is an awareness in the Netherlands by the minister. The minister is promoting e-health. The Trimbos Institute is promoting it. Also, in most of the mental health organizations, there is an IT platform in place, so that the management also is aware of the possibilities. But now about the professionals, when we started, most of them were already trained in using the platform, but most of them didn't use it in their daycare, in the regular practice. So they had a kind of theoretical awareness, but not a practical awareness. In their teams, they forgot the option of offering CCBT. So what we started in the MasterMind project, in the teams we collaborated with, we selected the key professional who was the advocate of the e-health, of the CCBT. And well, that helped. But it helped not enough, I think, because these people move, and then we had to go again and ask for someone else, and it still kept on being a barrier. So we now think that in teams, professionals have their evaluations yearly, and then the use of the e-health should be on the agenda. But we think that will take a lot of time. So therefore, Jan Smit is one of the initiators, and Els Doosman is here also. We started during the MasterMind project last year a specific clinic, outpatient clinic for e-health, with professionals who are very motivated and who get more and more experienced in using it. And we branded this clinic as a separate clinic, e-health at Mind. And we also want to give the opportunity for patients to go to our website and to get some information, and they can fill out a questionnaire, and we give them personal advice. So we hope this will give us a lot more patients who specifically come to ask for CCBT. Increasing the awareness might also help when GPs will refer directly for CCBT. And up to now, we don't have any referral of that kind. So GPs refer for depression care, and from our regular teams, we get referrals to our e-health team. We tried everything, newsletters, website, also for patients, but that is not enough. So our next strategy is to approach the GPs in our region directly and go talk about our options and try to kind of market our e-health treatments. Yes, and part of that, maybe that's the next slide. Our minister, she promotes all the time e-health, and we had 2 weeks ago an e-health week, and in that week we had a promoting action of our website, and the provider of our IT platform visited several waiting rooms of our clinic, and they gave information and also increased the awareness among professionals and patients. So Else is here. This is the moment we launched our own website. But when everybody is aware, then the next step is how should it be conducted, should it be provided? And we have the experience that just training professionals in the use of the IT platform and saying, well, there is a depression module on it, go ahead, is not enough. They need time, and they also have to be motivated to learn to work with that module. Because we offer it in a blended format. We start fortunately, we do what you said. We first meet the patient and talk about our platform, and then we blend it and give alternated face-to-face sessions and online sessions. Important is also that the professionals can consult experts, and this specific clinic, this e-health at Mind clinic, has this function so that others can consult the expert in this e-health modules. What helps to engage with professionals is when the module is attractive. And some are really supported by it because they say, I need to stick to the protocol of CCBT, and that helps me a lot. So we think you have to select motivated therapists, otherwise you won't get it on the working floor. Now the last slide is about what patients can benefit from it. Professionals always have this discussion and say, in secondary care, our patients are too complex, we cannot help them with CCBT. But our experience is when there is an indication for regular CBT, most patients can also do CCBT. They have to be relatively stable, they have to be committed, come to visits, do homework assignments, and even if they're not so skilled in use, the use of computers, if they are interested, the program is so patient-friendly that they can use it. So we hope when we have this experience of therapists who can really do it and who can select patients who can benefit, that it will grow in the upcoming years.
Thank you, Anneke. I think it is, in that sense, also a combination of both characteristics of the professional, but also the patient profile, which needs clarity. And of course, the GP and the referrers need to be educated on what patient indeed might be beneficial to receive these kinds of services, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now, quickly going to the organizational level, which we also brought into view in our study. And what we've seen there in terms of barriers is, of course, the availability, but also the amount of reimbursement of resources. So that includes both staff, just availability of qualified staff, but also who pays for treatment, of course. What we've seen is, just on a high level, in the first wave, you see that a lot is paid by public health system. So a lot of that means, or that's my assumption, is there is quite a lot of attention to at least getting these services reimbursed. In Wave 2 countries, it's much different, and you see at least half of it is being paid by either patients or other ways to deliver, but also to receive these kinds of services. So that's an important point, I think. One other point, and perhaps this really also relates to the issue of training professionals. It's not only the professors or it's not only the educational institutes that need to be delivering education to the healthcare force, but perhaps first it is the recognition of the service as being valid, as being a valid treatment option, and then education might follow more easily. And of course, a major barrier is the technological stability. Although we are in an e-health century, still there is a lot to gain in stability and reliability, and of course the interoperability of the different systems in place within an hospital, for instance. This is a major barrier just for professionals. If you need to give your report in 2 different systems, that doesn't work, of course. Facilitating is really to have someone on the floor being available, but also really dedicated to make these services into practice and know all ins and outs about these services is being felt as very important. And the other way around can be blocking if this person falls away, for instance. And of course, the involvement in all levels within the organization, so ICT support, but also the administration support, the professionals, the clinical directors, decision makers, they should be involved in at whatever time during the process of implementation. And regarding implementation, what I found striking is that there is a high leadership commitment within the organization to implement it. Everybody is convinced that we should do this, but we also saw that there is a very low clarity or even lack of implementation strategies. The operationalization of this vision, let's do it, and the decision even, let's do it, does not translate in strategies. And so I was thinking a little bit about that. Possible explanation might be, of course, the complexity of the service. It relates to so many different aspects in an organization that it might be very difficult to have an all-compassing and quick operationalization in an implementation strategy. But also it was noted that work was more being regarded as operational, whereas of course it relates to working procedures and changes in roles and responsibilities of people involved. What you then saw is a lot of focus on communication and marketing and ad hoc approaches in these kinds of implementation processes. And my personal opinion is that we should pay more attention to not only decision making and awareness, but also making it happen and do this in a systematic way. So turning to the research part of it, what we've learned, I think, is what we were able to do is at least the very first solid attempt to do such kind of large-scale observational studies in apples, but all different apples. And it gave us a window on reality, what is happening there, and we don't know. We have a lot of information about, or perhaps a lot of information about a controlled environment, but what is really happening in routine practice. And I think we gained a lot of information there about, and experiences about what is needed from the professional and the organization and the patient. But this natural laboratory has definitely all kinds of limitations. So the heterogeneity, the differences amongst the sites makes it very difficult to compare and say something about really oorzaak en gevolg, how do you say in English, the cause and consequences of certain interventions. So I'm very much into implementation science, would like to advance that to some degree at least, and I think we have a very solid starting point here with MasterMind and what we've done. But how can we advance implementation science? Well, perhaps at least try to be more, to harmonize e-health technology assessment, and MAST is a very good starting point there, but we should do more about instrumentation, about outcomes. There's a lot of work on pharmacological assessments out there, and I think we can learn from that. But also, of course, what is implementation success, and how are we going to measure that? So when has become something normal in routine practice? These are discussions I think I would like to proceed on at least. And for MasterMind, so there is much more to say. We have only 45 minutes and had most of it already there, but there are lots of thick paper reports saying things about clinical aspects, safety, professional perspectives, economic aspects, organizational, etc. Keep in mind it is observational, so it is again this window on reality, and it gives a lot of hints and trends, I think, of things that matter to the implementation of these kinds of services in routine practice. But also there are guidelines on procurement, for instance, lessons learned and how to buy these services like e-mental health, guidelines on possible pathways for collaborative care through video conferencing, and suggestions for wider development, which will be discussed later as well. So what's next? Finalize, do the reporting there. One thing I find very interesting myself is trends in patient profiles. So again, the discussion on what patient benefits most of these services, but also in combination with what treatment delivery modality, so guided versus unguided, and the minimal support or the blended version, and who do we reach that? Of course, we would like to secure dissemination and transferability of the results, and we have a momentum now, that's been said, of course, and we need to carefully think on how we're going to do that. And one of the ways is going beyond those barriers and facilitators by a next, well, more scientifically oriented project, which has been mentioned earlier, Implemental, looking into tailored implementation strategies. And I would like to have a break, of course, yeah. But I think what we've done so far, it's really, when I joined this project, 15 regions, 5,000 patients targeted, immense number of deliverables, but we still did it. And what I find so the patients is great, but there is continuation of upscaling of these services. There is momentum in Scotland, there is momentum in Denmark, everywhere people are just taking the messages up and proceed. And we even have a basis for a deeper understanding of those processes of implementation. So I think the wheels are definitely spinning, and the opportunity is here to take it further, I think. Yes, so concluding remarks, I would like to invite you as well to well, your last, and for you, Niels, it probably is the real last thing to mention here in the mastermind. Your concluding remark, thank you.
Well, it has been very interesting to be part of Mastermind. I think we've learned a lot cross-culturally, cross-borderly. And there are some really inspiring people that are colleagues that I would like to continue working with, but I'm too old for this kind of stuff, so I'll leave it to my young people sitting here to continue the good work. And thank you very much for all the good fun we've had in Mastermind.
Thank you, Niels. Anneke.
Well, I fully agree with you, Niels. We had a very nice time at different places in Europe. I think Mastermind really boosted e-health in the Netherlands and the other regions. But I think we have to be very active to keep the wheel spinning. Because I have also a concern that at some of our sites it will slowly fade away when we don't do anything. So I'm looking forward to the Implemental study, and I'm also looking forward to the final report of Mastermind, and from which we can learn maybe somewhat more. For example, about the number of sessions we should give, the number of the extent of guidance. So I hope we can pay attention to that too in a conference or something.
Thank you, Anneke. Erik.
Okay, I'm very delighted to sit here as a patient and as a patient representative. Many thanks to the consortium that Gambian Europe was invited to contribute to this project. I think there's still a long way to go. What I experienced in Mastermind is still a little ahead of what is really happening in Europe. So once more, there's still a long way to go. because I discovered during the patient advisory boards that Netherlands is not the same as Greece, and Denmark is not the same as Cyprus, as a matter of speaking. So thank you very much to the consortium partners, and I'm looking forward to the next project. And I really want that we as patients, we will really use and can use e-mental health, CCBT, in a proper way for the future throughout all Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, then I think we're ahead of schedule. Are there any questions you would like to clarify? There is time for it. Elaine.
Can I talk without the mic? Oh, okay. No? Okay. First of all, thank the four of you excellent presentations. I have a question for Anneke, Dr. van Schaik. If we look now at the current evidence, blended treatment is not doing it yet better than face-to-face. What do you think should be done, or what are the priorities to improve also the clinical impact of blended? Because as you said, if we cannot show that, maybe then it fades out because therapists are not, convinced, and patients may be not interested. Can I ask Eric as well? So my second question is for Eric. Thanks also to Gamian for all your involvement in a number of projects. Do you think we should increase the participation of patients and organizations like Gamian more than only, in the role of valorizing the products, but maybe more think along with the developments or the type of research projects we conduct?
Anneke, can I ask you first?
Yes, so we did not prove yet that blended treatment is as cost effective. And you asked me, how can we give it a place, or how can we improve it? Yes. Yeah. Well, I think actually the studies we did up to now was still with quite unexperienced therapists, so they need a lot of time to really get familiar with the treatment. And I think when you have the specialized teams or key persons, then that will help to implement it better. And the therapists I know from this group, from our clinic, for example, they see many advantages in the blended treatment. And we should not forget that, because the information on the internet is very informative. Patients can look up their homework assignments, they can read things, we have nice videos, and that is improving all the time. So I think it really can add something to the quality of our treatments. Also, because what I mentioned before is that therapists are more forced to work according to protocol. So I think this activity of the patient at home and the interaction with the therapist is actually better than a regular CBT. So I hope that of course the possibilities of technology will improve, that it's still getting nicer to work with it. So it must be attractive for the patients to do it. And the next thing I want to mention as a psychiatrist, that up to now, the modules that exist are nearly only CBT. And therapists, for example, and GPs don't do CBT themselves. But now we are working on a module to support antidepressant treatment. And this eHealth has a huge opportunity to do that. You can make informative movies about the working mechanisms. So you make patients more motivated to use the pills. And you can also help doctors to stick to the protocol also, to switch at the right moments, because they get the message, okay, you have now prescribed the antidepressants for 6 weeks, the patient is still having a depression, well, why shouldn't you switch to another medication? So I see lots of opportunities still.
Thank you. Erik, can I ask you, patient?
Okay, answering your question, Helene, I'm referring to Alexander, his presentation, where he speaks about the edges and the middle. If the goal is to get e-mental health, CCBT, run out through all Europe, meaning also Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, I think we should, as Gambian Europe, do even more work. As you know, I jumped in this project somewhere quarter when it was already starting. I hope to do more from Gambian Europe points of view in implemental. You might say it is interesting to invite also national patient organizations, but I think then you will get until, I don't know, 50 partners or something, so that's not the purpose. But what I felt during the patient advisory boards, when I was talking with Hungarian people and people from Cyprus, they barely knew what computerized cognitive behavior therapy was. So it looked like it was still far of what they could do, what they knew, and so on. So once again, I think that we should be, as Gambian Europe, we should do even more, a better dissemination, because we experienced that by writing newsletters, sending to our national members is not enough. So I think, yeah, we should involve more partners, but I think it has to go via Gambian Europe, because otherwise you end up with, 50 partners maybe. But I think that's necessary.
Thank you very much. So one last question then. Yeah, 1 minute. Otherwise, I'm going to just, there, Marco.
Because you have so different ways of administrating CCBT. Do you have enough data, and do you intend to compare the way it has been administrated? Because, I mean, you go from total self-care, only 5 sessions to 25 sessions in Germany. So it would be maybe interesting to see when you are more effective in using it.
Yeah. Well, it will take at least the rest of the day to have an elaborate answer to that, because of the complexity of indeed the different settings, but also the different patient characteristics, different instruments used. As far as I'm concerned, I think we will definitely try to have some comparisons, but it will only be, it will not be definitive in terms of, well, this is more effective than the other. But we can, I think, definitely identify trends in looking at patient profiles who might be more beneficial to the one service versus another type of service. Yes, we will do that. Yeah. So now then, I would like to close this round table. Wasn't that round, but still, it is a table. And outside, I think now is the lunch. So enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.